It is your prisonplanet.tv memberships that fund so much of what we do here on this operation. And then we're more than happy for the TV show after it's aired live, then be leaked out onto the web to tens of millions of people. That's our goal. Ladies and gentlemen, it is Friday, and we have got a giant plate of key information to go over, obviously, today. We have got the West with special forces backing al-Qaeda and other jihadis in the capital city of Syria. We have got the Attorney General caught engaged in criminal activities against the Second Amendment, shipping guns and hand grenades into Mexico, held in contempt. They can move to have the district attorney for the District of Columbia to go to a grand jury, and Holder could face a year in jail or fines. And they say that they are going ahead with the continued process that could lead to criminal and civil penalties against Eric Holder. The issue is this goes to Janet Napolitano. This goes to Barack Obama and the 700-plus documents that they've got. They made the same mistake Nixon has. This is not going to protect them if we put heat on the Republican Party leadership. The problem is, as evidenced by what happened yesterday, I was in such an angry fit. I was saying Alito. It was Roberts appointed by Bush. I guess both appointed by Bush. George W. Bush, the guy that has seizures, the guy who's on all this medication, the guy that I said back at the time, and I don't follow the Supreme Court too much, to be honest with you, looked like he was mentally ill or something. I mean, Roberts looks like a weirdo. But, I mean, they all do. I mean, Sotomayor looks like a crazy person. I watched her in the hearings. I say I don't follow it. I actually follow it quite a bit. It's just, I mean, she looks like a lunatic. Elena Kagan looks like a freak. I mean, I got to tell you, I'm not a mainline Republican type guy, okay? But, I mean, what is going on with the Democratic appointees? And I understand that Roberts was appointed by Bush. I'm just saying, I mean, it's a bunch of, they look like mentally ill people. I mean, if I was out at an event and they were talking to me and I was looking into their eyes, there's something wrong with these people. I mean, they're mental midget idiots. They really are. I mean, I've read some of their findings, their comments. And it's written like a bunch of prattle. I mean, I don't agree with everything Scalia does, everything Clarence Thomas does, but these are well-reasoned, intelligent-sounding things they say, even if you don't agree with all of it. Ruth Bader Ginsburg, Kagan, Sotomayor, all of these people are just clowns that would sell people out and vote for unconstitutional, rule for unconstitutional garbage. So they were shoveled out of the depths of tyranny to be put in black robes and put in a big marble sarcophagus and rolled out at us. It makes me want to throw up. It really does. And I am not someone who ever suffers depression. I get angry and I get out of control. And I let my anger, I mean, it's not an act, folks, when you see me get mad. In fact, you're seeing me control myself. And I can't let it spill over in the office or in my private life. And I don't want to talk about myself all day. But this is so big, and in my gut, I am very depressed. And I am never depressed unless a family member dies or something like that. And I am depressed. It is so alien to feel depressed for me. And I am so angry at these people, too. Every facet of it, it's such a fraud. And to have to watch all the idiot Democrat supporters and Michael Moore, a guy worth, $50 million or whatever it is, who, has Halliburton stock and defense contractor stock. It's just a total front. He knows he's a fraud. Up there saying this is the first step towards communism, the first step towards universal, all this. Bull. And that's bad enough. This is banker written. And let's get that straight when we come back. As much fun as it is to hate Obama, We're going to talk about who's really behind this and look at how people are responding to the Republican defection. Stay with us. We have a very important transmission yet again lined up for you today and jam-packed on this Friday worldwide transmission as we blast out on the AM and FM dial, like new affiliates like WNOX in Knoxville, Tennessee. And we are also going out on XM 166 and, of course, simulcast on global shortwave WWCR. And #1 when it comes to audio streaming and podcasting for talk radio. Find it all at Infowars.com. Video streaming at prisonplanet.tv. Backup site, prisonplanet.com. Okay, the debate is raging insanely. Well, let me first mention who's on today. I had Webster Tarpley set up days ago. I mean, we knew the health care ruling was coming, but we weren't sure. I had Tarpley popping in because he's been to Syria. He's been there during the bombardment, during the Al-Qaeda attacks, been in Libya under the air bombardment. And I wanted to get his take on this big issue that's kind of like, oh, that's over there. You know, UN, NATO war, Al-Qaeda's the good guys, backed by our government. And I've got Tarpley coming on, but I'm going to not spend as much time as I was just because I've got to get into this healthcare situation. But that is important. So he's coming up here in about 5 minutes. And usually with something this big, I would cancel a guest, but I'm not going to cancel Frank Serpico. He doesn't do a lot of radio interviews, the famous New York police detective who exposed government drug dealing. Guys, will you re-pull me that Washington Post Foreign Affairs article that you gave me yesterday where they were talking about the U.S. government shipping drugs with Fast and Furious? I think the headline on it was a whitewash article, but they had to admit that the head of the NRA is investigating it and says that's what he thinks, Wayne LaPierre. And they said, oh, it's dangerous. People all over Washington now think it's about drug dealing and gun running and organized crime in the White House. That's what it is. That's in federal court. That was in the Chicago Tribune almost a year and a half ago. Well, I guess it was in early 2011. Hiding in plain view. We've been talking about it ad nauseum. And so we're going to be discussing all of that with Frank Serpico coming up. And just corruption in general, not just his story. So Frank Serpico, legendary whistleblower, joining us coming up today. Okay. Obviously, we've also got William Shatner, and we called up William Shatner's people. He's still on an airplane to South Africa, and they're like, "Oh, we know who you are. Oh, yeah, he wants to come on." So we'll see if that happens. Cross our fingers. Hope to die, stick a needle in our eye, because let me tell you, I love William Shatner. That scene when he fights the Reptoid in the old Star Trek is the best comedy in the galaxy. And I love Ted Knight too, but he's been dead forever. I mean, it's just that kind of comedy that's just, but being serious at the same time. I've never even really tried to get William Shatner on. I criticize some of his transhumanist stuff, but he just wants to live forever. He said that, so he hangs out with Kurzweil and all them. We'll see what happens with that. Side issue, but that kind of makes me not be as depressed. That's what we got to do. We don't even go after celebrities. We got to just start off IMDb Pro, just randomly calling all the big celebrities, because a lot of them end up being listeners. We can just get them on the show. Boom, like that. But we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens with all of that. Let me just stop right there, though, and get into the serious news. There is a Joseph Curl article that I agree with part of but disagree with. I mean, it's all really your perspective. It's kind of like Rand Paul. Well, these are the two parties we have, and, you know, do you work in the system or do you just sit there on the sidelines? Well, when the whole system's a fraud, you've got to do something. Again, it's the trap of you can go this way or that way, but both ways go into the lion's den in the final equation. So we've got an article, Curl, Roberts to the rescue for Romney. And yes, that's true. This will make people, it's true politically, doesn't mean it's right. And it doesn't mean that's why Roberts did it, who looks like he is on drugs for his seizures. I mean, he looks like a space cadet. And I said that on air when years ago Bush was nominating him. I said, this guy looks like a space cadet. And by the way, we've dug it up. I'm going to get to this later after Tarpley's on. John G. Roberts Sr. made all sorts of weird New World Order speeches. So we're going to be really digging into this. But the point is that yes, politically, this will make people get behind Mitt Romney, conservatives, just out of pure pure panic over what's happening with Obama. And it doesn't even mean it's going to do anything. But, yes, it will energize the Republican base so that the guy that authored what was a large part of what became Obamacare can become president, who's now pledged today and yesterday again that he will overturn it and says it's horrible. So, quite frankly, I would love to just have hope and a prayer and think, well, then we need to get behind Mitt Romney because he's going to go in there and overturn this. But, ladies and gentlemen, there's a reason Roberts went with this, and it's because that's what the insurance companies want, the big ones. This is the big secret that nobody will talk about. I mean, it's in the news, and Paul Watson wrote a big article about it this morning with the links to the admissions. It's a very, very important article. Michael Moore celebrates Obamacare law written by insurance companies owned by the big banks, by the way. And then he has all the proof in that article. So, again, this is a tax that they make you pay, 35 million people roughly, 33, 35, 37, they debate the number, that are uninsured, where you've got to go buy it, and then they can always change it. The law is wide open where they can, ratchet it up. It increases the price of the health care, and it makes you go and buy it from the insurance companies. It makes you go and get the health care. It forces you onto it, the working poor or others that just don't choose to be part of the medical system, the establishment medical system. And that's why they admit it's a tax. And if you don't, the IRS just takes the money out of your bank account. And we've got reports coming, and this has already been happening. And people think this is free health care. They have no idea what they're talking about. And, of course, health care roughly in the last 2 years has already gone up, just in anticipation, 25%. They're talking about 50%. You saw the stocks go up of the big banks and the insurance companies and the health care companies. Of course, their stocks went up. And some spin it and say, well, that's because the uncertainty has been removed. No. They wanted this, okay? I read it in the Wall Street Journal. I read it all over where they're the spokespeople for the big insurance company, banking lobbies, others. They were all for this. They get what they want. The big banks lobby for all this in Europe. They want that money, and they want control, and they want you dependent. And they are going to make 30-plus million people go buy insurance from them now. And then they also have the nightmare situation where now that they've got things communalized, the social engineers are already saying it, well, now we're going to control what you eat and what you drink because you're making all of us spend money because you have an unhealthy lifestyle. So now we've got to surveil what you're doing with your little smart card that you pay your national sales tax with, that they're all getting in line. This is what the Federal Reserve has been proposing. This is what they sell as the idea to get rid of the income tax. They're not going to get rid of that. They're going to keep it, but just call it the Social Security tax and then ratchet it up. So it'll end up being 9999, the hidden 9, but it'll end up being 10, 10, 10, 10, 11, 11, 11, 11, 12, 12, 12, 12. This is their plan. This is what they're maneuvering us into, signing us on to the zombie banks. I had an article called Zombie Banks I wrote a few weeks ago in a video. People were like, this guy's crazy saying zombies run the banks. That's the financial name. The public is just so ignorant. That's why they're getting away with all of this. Because I try to be informed. I spend probably 10 hours a day, no exaggeration, researching one way or the other. And I'm just totally overwhelmed. And there's so many crimes I can't even keep track of it. And the special interests, the crony capitalists that make their bread and butter off of government subsidies and monopolies and bailouts. And here's the $10 trillion point. Not the $64 million question, but the massive, quadrillion answer. Until the Republicans realize that there are massive special interests that are above the law and are monopoly operators controlling government and using it to knock out their competition and create monopolies and combines, it's over. And the foolish, childlike Democrats that want free houses and cars and think that everything is this cornucopia of goodies, and who hate libertarians and the rest of it. Libertarianism, the idea that someone else isn't your property or your slave. And oh, well, they'll make the big government work. They'll create a utopia with it. They know how to tweak it. It's just if the right people are in charge, it doesn't work like that. And it ends up creating massive dependency and the nightmare we now see. And you've got the Democrats running around hailing this new health care package as if it's heaven on earth. And Michael Moore saying, oh, this is the beginning of the... What was his quote of the unified healthcare system with the government run by a bunch of eugenicists in control of it, and the death panels and the rationing all admitted. Remember, none of that existed, but now they admit, oh yeah, we are going to ration your care because everybody's got to share, and now they've got all these dependents who are into this psychology and don't know any other way to make their way in life without a government check, who are now the army that is going to rule for the bankers. And they will do anything. And again, we're going to go to break, come back with Webster Tarpley, get into Syria where he's been, that whole thing, also get his take, obviously, on the healthcare situation. I'm not sure quite what it'll be, but we'll find out with Dr. Tarpley here in a moment. And then, of course, later, William Shatner, I mentioned that we've called him up. We're going to probably get him on the show, but as soon as he's able. But the point here is LAX... And they go to check inside his pants, and it says they singled him out, and his pants fell down in his underwear, and people laughed at him. And he said it was the most humiliating thing of his life. I'll read the full quote coming up. And again, this is what happens at LAX. I've talked to people in Hollywood. They say it's well known. Stalkers are getting jobs there, so they can grope whoever they want. Imagine you get to grope William Shatner, if that's what you're into it, some perv at the airport. I mean, this is how ridiculous this is. The Pentagon runs Al-Qaeda attacking Syria. Well, some are saying that Roberts did this to supercharge Mitt Romney's campaign. Funny, I thought judges wear black robes because it's supposed to cloak who they are as a person. They're supposed to just judge the law. Because the Constitution says you can't compel somebody to buy some private good. And this precedent is very, very dangerous. I'm going to get to it later after Webster gets into Syria, as that's why I've got him here. But here are some of the articles that are at Infowars.com. Napolitano, Obamacare ruling will drive libertarians to Romney. Yeah, no kidding. And then the guy that wrote it, the Obamacare precedent, the Second Amendment is next. Kurt Nimmo, key article, read it. Michael Moore celebrates Obamacare with law written by insurance companies. Report, more people killed by bees and drowning in Bath than from terrorism. I looked those statistics up years ago and kept parroting it, and now it's like all over the news, they're picking that up. That's just what I randomly chose to show the illustration. It just shows what you can do with a radio show reaching millions. 15 reasons why the Obamacare decision is a mind-blowing disaster for America. That's coming up. But right now, let's go to Webster Griffin Tarpley on Syria, because he was just there, I don't know, 6-8 months ago or less. He was there while there were sniper attacks and things. It's now admitted, and I've shown the Fox News articles. You can look them up. I've shown, even Fox, LA Times, that Al-Qaeda was used in Libya, now in Syria, and now the special forces, Western forces, are backing Al-Qaeda. Webster, what in the world is going on with the situation in Syria, and what does this bode for the world, oil prices, all of it?
Well, as of right now, it's inching towards war, a general Middle East war, slowly, by fits and starts, one step forward, 2 steps back, and so forth. The news this morning is, on the one side, Turkey has massed military forces along the border with Syria in the wake of this shooting down by Syria of a Turkish jet that had invaded Syrian airspace, probably testing. So the Turks have got their military forces lined up on the Syrian border in the north. And then there's this strange report from Debka file, which is not a reliable source, Israeli intelligence, that the Saudis are sending elements of their military. There's a Saudi army. It's made up completely of mercenaries, right? There are no Saudi princes get their hands dirty in basic training. But there is a Saudi army. It's got some special forces, and that they're sending them through Jordan so that they could threaten Syria from the south or the southeast or so forth. So you got obviously an attempt to intimidate Syria. Right now, everything is in the wake of that Syrian, it's an F-4 Phantom reconnaissance configured that went into Syrian airspace. I would call it a Gulf of Tonkin pattern. You go into Syrian airspace, then out, then in, then out, and eventually the Syrians take the provocation and shoot you down. It does also show that the Syrian air defense is capable, that they're alert, that it's not a cakewalk, and anybody going in there is going to have a price to pay. So I think that was interesting. Right now, it's a big weekend of diplomacy. You've got Hillary Clinton meeting with Lavrov, the Russian foreign minister, in St. Petersburg. That's a preparation for a Geneva conference tomorrow, which is it's the U.S., the British, the French, the Russians, the Chinese, not Syria, as far as I can see, Turkey, Iraq, Kuwait, Qatar. Saudi's not there, which is crazy, and Iran not there. That's even more crazy. So it's kind of a conference on Syria and the Middle East, but it's got some of the most important people not there. And the U.S. Insisted that Iran not go, and the other side of it is that the U.S. is demanding that there be a plan to get rid of Assad, and Russia is simply saying no. So that, I think, is going to be a complete failure. But you get the idea.
Let me stop you for a moment. I mean, you've been over there. I haven't. I found Debka Files certainly has a pro-Israel slant and is connected to Israeli intelligence, but I found a lot of what they put out turns out to be true. I mean, sure. Days before it was admitted that Western forces are in there advising the jihadis in moving in to attack Damascus. Days later, it came out that indeed that was going on. So did I mishear you when you said you don't find it to be a credible source?
I think they're very uneven. I mean, they put things in there that are quite wild. But then again, sometimes it's true, right? They have to mix in real things to keep your site going. So the summary I would give is this: NATO has used the methods of Hitler in regard to Syria. First of all, they did to Syria what Hitler did to Czechoslovakia in 1938, meaning that they fomented a rebellion inside, and then used that to start, beating
sure,
the
same
drum
thing was done in Libya. I mean, that's the strategy.
The second, though, the second
we'll
one
stay
is,
there. We got to go to break.
Okay.
We'll be back with Webster, Tarpley, Tarpley.net's his website. I'm Alex Jones with Infowars.com and PrisonPlanet.com. We'll be right back to look at why this is so important. Then we'll get Webster's take on Obamacare. Yeah, the federal government's bought 450 million rounds of hollow point dum-dum bullets for you and your family. Hundreds and hundreds, and now they say they're going to order over 1,000 armored pillboxes for you and your family. Armed drones, checkpoints, troops rolling around in different cities. Secretary of the Army saying they're getting ready basically for martial law and to put troops in every city. Oh, gee, I wonder what's coming. Oh, our guest in the Obama deception broke it down. Webster Tarpley, it is the global collapse and reorganization post-industrial New World Order system. And I'm going to get Tarpley's take on that, the healthcare situation, and this. House could arrest Holder with inherent contempt power. And I covered this on the TV show last night. Yes, in the past, the Congress had a jail. Just like the president claims he has this power to kill people, he doesn't really have that. Now, if there was an enemy navy attacking New York 200 years ago, the president could say, defend, without going to Congress because it was imminent. But to declare war on a country, he'd have to. So the point is, the Congress has handed over all its authority because the system wants a bunch of people that lay down on their backs. But they could also go right now to the district attorney of the District of Columbia and call for him to have a grand jury investigation of what Holder's done, shipping guns and hand grenades into Mexico and drugs back into the U.S. And again, this is bubbling over. Here is the Washington Post, farmpolicy.com, as their publication, Fast and the Ridiculous. In Mexico, it's taken as fact that the United States is backing drug cartels. And then it goes on and says, Wayne LaPierre says this needs to be looked into. And other big people, what are we going to do? People are listening to this. It's only been in the news for over a year and a half. El Paso Times. Come on, reporters listening. Go look it up. El Paso Times, Chicago Tribune. We've done countless articles at Infowars.com on it. You're like, well, how do we find them? Search Fast and Furious involves drug dealing. Just look it up. It's not hard. I'm ranting. It's just news overload. Webster, finish up with the Syria situation. I mean, in your researched opinion, am I right to be concerned about this? Because Medvedev, Putin, regardless of what people think of them, they have nuclear weapons. The bankers run us, and they've shown they're insane with 40-to-1 bets with MF Global and stuff. And now they're moving weapons all around Europe up against Russia. They've got jihadis running around wearing Al-Qaeda uniforms, with flying Al-Qaeda flags, desecrating Orthodox churches. I was saying Catholic, some are Catholic, most are Orthodox, urinating all over things, defacing Jewish and Christian graves. I mean, just acting like complete maniacs. And do you see Christians rioting everywhere? No. We're just like, good, we deserve it. And then all the neocons that love Islamophobia, they're saying nothing about this. And I mean, it's Twilight Zone, Webster. I feel like I'm living in the Twilight Zone. What do you say? Finish your points.
This is very important about the massacres, right? Because we had this story from Thierry Mason that Ben Rhodes of the Obama White House is preparing this endgame maneuver similar to Operation Mermaid or whatever they had in Libya last August, that the NATO forces would take control of Arabsat and Nilesat, and they would push the Syrian channels, the pro-government channels, off the air. They bombed one of them this week to probably prepare part of that. And then they would put on fake CIA-produced Arab-speaking channels saying Assad is fleeing, and they have these fake sets in Saudi Arabia and Qatar, similar to the fake set of the Green Square in Libya last year. They've got downtown Syria, downtown Aleppo, downtown Damascus, downtown Aleppo, downtown Homs, and the presidential palace. So they've got sound stages ready to do that at that point. So they're coming along. But now the thing is, if you do that and you have a coup, if the Muslim Brotherhood and the Al-Qaeda essentially take over Syria, there's going to be a huge massacre of Alawites, but there's also going to be a massacre of Christians. And you're right to say those are Greek Orthodox, but they're also Catholic. In other words, Greek Catholic, so-called Melkites. I have to thank them. I stayed with them for quite a number of days when I was in Syria. That's basically who invited me. So there's a great danger of a massacre of Alawites and Christians. Now, it's interesting that Cass Sunstein, in another wing of the Obama White House, has already thought about this. You got Ben Rhodes preparing the bloody coup in Syria. Cass Sunstein and his wife, Samantha Power ran the coup in Egypt last year. Cass Sunstein has got this thing going against the Vatican. Vatican Spring, Vatican leaks, right? And all this stuff, that the Vatican is a criminal enterprise and they launder money and all this stuff. And this is a way to prepare the massacre in Syria and elsewhere in the Middle East, because this has been going on. It's happening in Libya even today, right? Christians are getting killed, displaced. If the Pope decides to rise up against this and do something, he could really hurt Obama. But they want to put the Vatican on the defensive, right? They want to say, we're going to suppress the Vatican because we're going to have them, worried about getting accused of being drug money launderers, so that they won't be able to protest a huge massacre.
And by the way, I ought to have you on. You've got a doctorate in Venetian history and other things, and you actually worked at the Vatican, lived in Italy. Right, you speak, sure. So you know what you're talking about. Where is the Vatican in this whole New World Order? Because I'm not Catholic. I've studied the history of it. I know quite a bit, but when it gets into the current things, I'm not defending a lot of stuff. Some of the things the Catholic Church does are obviously pro-globalist and things. But I do see in the media and in the culture and Obama saying you've got to hire people that aren't Catholics. You've got to pay for abortions. There is an assault. You've had the liberal globalists, red diaper doper babies say infiltrate, become priest. I wouldn't even say it's the priesthood it's the predators went in there because the kids are there, but then the church did cover that up, which is wrong. Just this whole thing. I'm now ranting, but what's really going on with the Vatican?
Remember, the fundamental thing is the Vatican and the British monarchy have been at war for 500 years, right? Since Guy Fawkes and the gunpowder plot, and really for almost a century before that. So you've always got to factor that in, right? The British hate the Vatican, and it's mutual. On the other hand, there's this oligarchical faction, the Venetians, the Roman black nobility, right? The feudal aristocrats of Rome, the Orsini, the Colonna, the various princely families. These people are also more hostile to the Vatican than not. So the Vatican is a big institution. It has within it everything that exists in the world. It's probably it's the oldest continuous institution, I guess, on the planet. There may be some competition on that, but you get the idea. It's been around for a long time. It's got everything in it. And the quality, since it's an elective monarchy, the quality of popes varies greatly. You can go from a good one to a bad one with simply one conclave. But I think right now, the thing that I see is that the U.S. line towards the Vatican is to bash them, because the whole U.S. line in the Middle East and the Mediterranean is a pro-Muslim Brotherhood, pro-Al-Qaeda policy, which is going to get a lot of Christians
and again,
killed.
we're not just saying that. Hidden in plain view, Al-Qaeda, more than ever, is out in the open, run by NATO, who are known narcotics traffickers. The troops grow the opium publicly on Fox News. Everything is Twilight Zone. They've got tanks rolling around in cities all over the U.S. getting us ready for the total collapse, and we're just sitting here sliding into it.
Let me just add, though, another aspect of this thing. The question of war and peace regarding Syria comes down to this guy, Erdogan. It's written Erdogan, but in Turkish, Erdogan, or something like that. He's the prime minister of Turkey. Now, he heads an Islamic fundamentalist party, I guess, an Islamist party, call it that. It's not quite fundamentalist. But it represents a departure from the Ataturk tradition, which has been, I think, quite successful in Turkey, although there were abuses. But now the question is, how crazy is Erdogan, right? Is he crazy enough to start a war with Syria? Because if he does, that will be the end of modern Turkey. I was in Beirut, Lebanon last November, part of this trip to Syria. I met General Michel Aoun. General Michel Aoun is like the de Gaulle of Lebanon in many ways. He's the leader of the Maronite Christians, and he's in an alliance with Hezbollah, which the U.S. obviously doesn't like. And he said, you have to understand, Turkey is the most fragile country in the world. Half of them are Islamists, half of them are strong secularists. They don't want to have any religious attributes in the government. And there's this minority of Kurds. 25 to 30% are Kurds. So what you see right now is the Turks they became a base for Al-Qaeda. There's no other way to put it. It's funny, Rick Perry said this. Remember Rick Perry in those debates? He said Turkey is now a base for terrorists. My God, he was right. He must have gotten a good briefing. Iskandarun, don't go to any hotels in Iskandarun, Turkey, because you're going to find Al-Qaeda in the next room. So forget the tourist industry in Turkey. But the question then is he going to take the plunge? Because if he does, here's what's going to happen. Already, the Kurdish rebels against Turkey are getting safe haven from the Syrians in the Syrian Kurdish area. And if the Turks insist on starting a war, the Syrian response will be to foment a general uprising of that 25% of this Turkish population who are Kurds. And that will be really a cataclysm for everybody, because Iraq, Iran, Syria, and Turkey would all be carved if you get an independent Kurdish state. So I would urge Erdogan to pull back. In other words, this is crazy. He has gotten this theory that he's the new Ottomans, right? He's the new Ottoman Empire, the new Turkish Empire.
No, I understand. And by the way, when you mentioned that, Business Insider and others are reporting that troops are piling up on both sides of the Syrian-Turkey border. And Turkey obviously said 4 days ago, they said on Monday, they said, if you even come near your own border with troops, Syria, we're going to attack you. So Turkey really wants to have a war, I guess, at NATO's behest. And then the Russians have reportedly, for several weeks, put in Marine Special Forces, Spetsnaz. So what do you expect Russia to do is the $64 million question, because Webster, they're clearly going ahead with this proxy war situation.
It looks that way. And remember, there's also the question of the campaigning season, which the season for military operations is now. The Mediterranean, everybody should know, the big thing about the Mediterranean is once it gets to be October, it starts to rain, right? Winter rains, autumn and winter rains. That's the Mediterranean. It's not sunny anymore when you get into October. There's fog and things like this. So there's an urge to act now. If Erdogan takes the plunge, that will be the breakup of modern Turkey. The people like Hillary Clinton, I think, are increasingly crazy. You've got the new foreign minister of France is also a warmonger. Fabius. He once had a debate with Chirac, the guy who later became president of France. And Chirac said to him, "Vous êtes un roquet. You're a little cur. You're a little attack dog, Fabius." So right now, Fabius is working as the attack dog for NATO. So that looks bad. On the other hand, Putin was in the Middle East this week. He was in Israel. Putin sat down with Netanyahu and I believe delivered a pointed warning to him. He said, "Dear Netanyahu," according to reports, "Dear Netanyahu, you have the devil you know, Assad, and you have done fairly well with Assad. You have had peace on the Golan Heights for the past 40 years practically. If you get the devil you don't know, you could be in big trouble." And then, of course, the other dimension that you point to, what will Putin do? He will do something. What will it be? I think this is the thread upon which the hope of peace now hangs.
And let's expand on that. What is the bankster strategy, manipulating the West into this, to put Al-Qaeda-light Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt, to back all of this destabilization? I mean, where does Israel really stand in that? Because Israel's wanting to go after Iran, but then all the Iranian proxies in the Middle East, the Hezbollah, but instead now they're going to have to deal with the classically, jihadist Saudi Arabian aligned groups. I mean, because I see the constant spam on InfoWars. It's got to be bots or something in there. And again, Israel does a lot of bad stuff. All these big countries do, all these powerful countries. But this obsession that if you slip on a banana peel, Israel did it. But I look at the different geopolitical makeup. This doesn't look good for Israel, and I've seen a lot of noises that Israel doesn't like all the Al-Qaeda people being put in around them. What's really going on there?
Well, the Israeli situation is going to be desperate, more or less independently of whatever happens, because of the refusal to make peace. Right, the way out for Israel is make peace now. Get the best conditions you can get. Make peace, wrap it up, normalize with everybody. Netanyahu is the opposite of that. But then you look at the Israeli debate. When this Arab Spring stuff started, right, Tunisia, the destabilization of the Arab world, there were two schools in Egypt, in Israel. One of them said, this is bad for us because we're going to get these fanatics taking power. And the other school said, it won't be that bad because these fanatics will break up the Arab states. In other words, the Egyptian state, the Libyan state will be smashed. And what we see in Libya, to be sure, is that the Libyan state has been smashed. There are not going to be any threats to Israel coming out of Libya, not anything serious of the type Gaddafi represented, because they're hundreds of dead in a given week. There's fighting all the time, gangs. It's a failed state, right? The wonderful outcome of the singing tomorrows of democracy is a failed state. Then you look at Egypt. Egypt is in danger, I think, of going that way, because you've got the army on the one hand, you got the Muslim Brotherhood on the other. They could cooperate if both were reasonable and said, look, we'll have power sharing and we'll have a gradual transition, a guided democracy and then a full democracy. But in the Egyptian presidential elections, the runoff was between Morsi, the guy who's now the president, Morsi of the Muslim Brotherhood. He got a little, 51, and the other guy who got 49 is Shafiq, the representative of the generals. I would stress there was a better candidate. The guy who came in third was my candidate, the Nasserist, and that is Hamdin Sabahi, pro-labor, pro-reform, never had anything to do with Mubarak, actually was jailed by Mubarak, open. All
right, we got to wrap this up because we're going to break.
No military dictatorship and no theocracy. That would have been the way out. But right now, Egypt is on the brink of pretty serious destabilization. Sudan, by the way, the new thing is they may be getting a color revolution going in Sudan, although I doubt it. It's possible. Anyway, some Israelis would say, look at this. All the Arab states are being smashed. They're all going to be failed states. That's good for us. That would be a cynical Israeli position that you hear.
So basically put al-Qaeda in to wreck everything. So I mean, do you think Netanyahu is supporting that? I mean, do you think Israel is involved in this then?
Netanyahu goes back and forth, but I think that would certainly have an appeal to Netanyahu, no doubt.
And then they can use al-Qaeda to take our liberties here at home. And the public's so dumb and ignorant, they don't even know that al-Qaeda publicly works.
Al-Qaeda is a threat in Pakistan. But in Libya and in Egypt and Syria, they're the singing tomorrows of democracy. So you gotta have double.
Gotta go to break. We're gonna come back and talk about the healthcare Obama ruling. My friends, in the second hour, we're gonna go over the latest news on William Shatner stripped down in public by our lords, the state, our gods, the TSA. We'll get into the latest on the Fast and Furious situation with contempt. Will they criminally go after Holder? But Webster, we got 5 minutes left. I want to shift gears. I know you've got to go and tape your own show that's here on Genesis on the weekends, World Crisis Radio. But we're here at the World Crisis. This is a direct tax to the insurance companies. From my research, they wrote this healthcare plan. A lot of the socialists and people think it's a step towards their communist dream. What is your view of what's happened? What do you make of Roberts, John G. Roberts, crossing over and putting it in the basket for Obamacare? And do you think Romney will try to repeal it?
Well, let me say, first of all, there is some evidence now that Roberts originally voted to strike down everything. And I think what obviously happened was the insurance companies, Wall Street, came to Roberts and they leaned on him and they said, listen, Sonny, we know you believe in this, original intent and all this crazy ideology, and we finance that ideology, but we don't believe our own propaganda. We want that money. We want everybody paying the insurance companies. So Roberts then flipped to the other side, and he got some benefits.
Yeah, he reportedly flipped, and the earlier writing looked like he was going to, I mean, this is actually in mainstream news, right. And then he came out and was like crying.
But look, here's the point. This is a victory of the finance oligarchs over the crazed petty bourgeoisie, the middle class, who think that this thing is the end of the world. And I wouldn't look at it that way. Remember, my position is Medicare for all. Easiest reform, remove the 65-year
Sure, let's be clear. This
limit.
is not, though, the socialist free health care, which would be a lot cheaper, than letting the IRS be the enforcer of the bankers.
I want Medicare for all, with no age limit, $100 per person per month. If you're destitute, if you're unemployed, you get it for free. And you pay for that by taxing Wall Street. Wall Street is not taxed. They pay zero. They pay zero on their corporate income tax. They pay zero on their quadrillions of turnover. So tax that. That's my tax. Now, however, let's look at it from a different point of view. Suppose you're one of the 30 or 40 million, or maybe 50 million, because it usually comes down to a group of about 50 million poverty-stricken Americans, right? They've been left out in the cold. You are not poor enough for Medicaid, because for Medicaid, you got to be practically destitute in many states. You are not old enough for Medicare. You are too old for S-chip, because you can get child health insurance, right? No matter how poor you are. You can get it for your kids. You're not a veteran, and you're not getting COBRA because you're not, coming out of a job that you lost. So here's the problem. There's a mass of people. Now, the result of this thing is Wall Street gets paid, but if you're in the middle, within 18 months, you're going to be able to get some kind of coverage. And I think that's a positive aspect. In other words, it's not all bad. Wall Street's going to get paid, yeah. Look, if the opposition is Ron Paul on the one side and ad busters on the other, Wall Street will get their way because there's no real opposition. But even within that, in order to get it through the Congress, they had to put in this thing, no pre-existing conditions. That's going to be over. You're going to get some coverage.
Oh, I've read it. It's written by the insurance companies. I mean,
but they had to make concessions to some kind of reality. So I think the big thing is remove the IMAC and MedPAC, remove the death panels, stop the rationing, and restore the
yeah,
500
but rationing always comes with socialist health care. Webster, thank you so much. I know the nightmare of England. Look, I've got people that work for me that live in England. It's a hellhole. But Webster, thank you. We'll talk to you more about it next week. We'll be right back. All right, it's the second hour of global transmission. I guess that'd be 1 o'clock Eastern, high noon Central, where I come to you from, Austin, Texas. Here's the deal. I want to give you a chance to tell me what you think about Obamacare, global care, banker care, and the Supreme Court ruling, John Roberts, the reports that he changed his votes 15 minutes before. That's got a bunch of news articles, people saying he looked like he was crying or he was on drugs. I mean, they were going to announce, and the word was that it was unconstitutional last week, but then they postponed it. I mean, and I said, ooh, that doesn't bode well. And it's because of the trillions that the banksters that own the big insurance companies are going to get. And that's what nobody in the right wing is going to tell you. God bless their little hearts. I mean, I agree with them on the Second Amendment, on abortion, but on all the other issues, they're just bamboozled by crony capitalists. The crony capitalists are the ones everywhere that fund the communist system. And they destroy your industry, shut everything down where you've got to be on the government dole. Because that becomes the economy. That becomes, you know, the factories are at the prisons. And it's a trap. That's what this corrupt, sickening ruling class has done. They're putting a bunch of TSA people all over the place, you know, pulling William Shatner's pants down. I mean, I just want to be left alone by these people. I want to just have some victories. But in a way, the fact that things are getting worse so much faster is a victory. I mean, I get the point of Joseph Curl in the Washington Times, is that worse is better. That's what the communists used to say. You know, they wanted to undermine things so it would collapse so they could take over. Well, we're not glad the globalists are collapsing things, but yeah, worse is better. I guess it will wake people up. That's what Andrew Napolitano, Judge Napolitano, is saying. He's saying this will get libertarians behind Romney. I don't know anybody hardly that really supports Romney. Or they say, well, he's Obama light. Really? Is he Obama light? I mean, Holder's a crook and discredited. Obama's a crook and discredited. You really think Obama could stay in 4 years and get away with martial law, get away with new wars, get away with this? I don't think so, even if we tried a race war like they tried with Trayvon Martin. And again, I don't even sit here and theorize about politics, what would work better. I mean, I know everybody else does that. I just say justice be done, the heavens fall. People say, oh, well, that's not a very nuanced or complex way of thinking. Look, I'm engaged in a lot of complex thinking, all right, ladies and gentlemen. All I do is study literature and art and history and news, and I know how little I do know. That's how much I know, which is a whole lot. But I'm telling you, the way we're going is the way every corrupt empire goes, and our death is being accelerated. Our rotting degeneration is moving very quickly, and it isn't pretty. And this is going to swallow up the ruling class as well. The crony capitalists and working with communists and socialists is going to end up destroying them. And they think they can have this balancing act and play the communists and the dependents and the welfare people off on what's left of the middle class. It isn't going to work. And let me tell you, then there's the zombification of society. People either get in the fast lane and drive 20 miles under the speed limit, I saw this today, with just enjoyment, that's like their power, or they drive recklessly. Some guy, I'm in the middle lane driving to work on 290, I'm going 70 miles an hour, speed limit. In the middle lane, car, 3 car lengths, 4 car lengths ahead of me. I don't even usually follow that close, but things were bunching. And here comes a guy in a Chevy work truck almost hitting me. And he goes around me and almost hits 2 other cars. And I'm just like, and you talk to people, they can't even take an order at a restaurant. People don't even talk anymore. They're dumber than a box of rocks. And it literally is like the zombie apocalypse. I mean, I'm telling you, we're in trouble, folks. Things are going to collapse. I mean, I'm sure of it. The question is, when? I'm going to give the number out. We're going to take your calls when we come back. All right, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to give the number out, and I'm going to take your phone calls. Because if I start getting into the news, I will never never get to your calls. So we're going to take about 40 minutes of calls interspersed with a little bit of headlines, and then I'm going to news blitz the last 20 minutes of this hour. And then we've got the legendary whistleblower joining us, Frank Serpico, and we'll get his take on all the corruption in the world. He's the guy, of course, one of the most famous police officers in U.S. history, who exposed that basically all the detectives were dealing drugs, running whores, everything else you can imagine. And many cities have just fallen to where the police are total mafias now. And the troops grow the opium in Afghanistan. No one wants to hear this. It's like, oh, don't talk bad about the troops. The troops themselves aren't bad. They're the ones complaining about it. But the bureaucrats and the bankers running things think we're so stupid. They run al-Qaeda in Libya. They're now putting al-Qaeda into Syria publicly, and it's not an outrage. And I know I talk about that every hour. I just can't get over it myself, how ridiculous it's all gotten. The federal government's building up for war with us. The drones are launching. This Obamacare thing is such a nightmare, so authoritarian, so unconstitutional. And then you get the socialists that think government can help people. Yeah, I mean, it saws off a leg and gives you a peg that they're like, well, it is for the insurance companies. They did write it, Tarpley earlier. You're right, it is a payoff to them, and it is a tax to them, but some people that aren't covered will be covered now. Yeah, when they bankrupt the whole system and it allows them to control the care. I mean, have you seen the banksters have lobbied for this in Europe and everywhere else, and it destroys the healthcare system? It wrecks everything, and you'll never be happy until you wreck everything. All right, I'm ranting. And then everybody from Sarah Palin to Rush Limbaugh to Rick Perry is freaking out over John G. Roberts, the Bush appointee, George W. Bush appointee. The word is changing his vote and coming out red-eyed and everything. And did he have a seizure? Did they threaten him? Gee, you think people get threatened when trillions of dollars are on the table? I mean, look at all, look, again, I'm not even a Republican, but look at the Democratic appointees. I mean, they would win an ugly contest, and I don't usually go off how somebody looks, because I'm not the prettiest person in the world, but let me tell you something, their eyes, their mannerisms, Sotomayor, Elena Kagan, I mean, these are gibbering weirdos. Ruth Bader Ginsburg, what a freak who says the UN should make our laws. Go look it up. And that they should control our rulings. Okay, I'm already ranting. I'm going to give you the number. I want to get your take. If you can get in, medical doctors, nurses, whatever. Hey, you like this idea? You think this is a great idea? Or are there people out there that support it? I promise that I'm going to try to control myself. I can't guarantee it. But if you disagree, you can get in as well. We don't screen your calls. 800-259-9231, 800-259-9231. The phones are open. But the guy called in and he gave the NPR line of, this will be just like Social Security. It won't be bad like you say. And I'm like thinking of what a Ponzi scheme Social Security is. I'm thinking of what a scam it is, how the banksters set it up to make us dependent. And here he is. They just believe in this system. They like it. But see, the system's coming to an end, which was planned to bring in this even more horrible public world government run by mega banks that say on the news we're their slaves. CNBC, yes, we're slaves of the bankers. They rule us, and we're slaves. Are we slaves? Yes. Yes, absolutely. What about you? Are we slaves of bankers? Yes, we're absolutely slaves. I mean, don't you get it? They want this. They want open borders. They want government-run health care. And by the way, I'm an expert on eugenics. I'm an expert. I've read, over the years, probably 50, 60 books written by these people, hundreds of their papers, their documents. Aaron's read over 100 books. I mean, we got a whole library written by these people. Their dream is to get control of health care so they can control it. The death panels, the rationing, it's all real. Or even if you've got money. Paul Watson's got money to go to a private doctor. He does one of the best jobs anybody working here, so he's paid the most. And let me tell you something. He's a contractor. He couldn't go get health care when he needed it. He had to go to the NHS, and they wouldn't help him. They wouldn't even do a test. He could hardly do his job for a month with a chest cold. I wasn't watching C-SPAN where they get up there and go, yes, they're waiting 1.5 years or 2 years for a surgery and they're dying. Yes, it's true. We need to do more. You know, killing people, killing old people, literally killing them. And now they tell you in Newsweek and Time how great it is. Paul Watson, not even 30 years old, been working for me 10 years. Couldn't go get a chest cold. They didn't even swab it. I've had chest colds before I couldn't get rid of. After about a week of it, I go to the clinic. I go to the hospital. I go to a clinic here in town. One of my dad's friends owns. I go in there. Doctor or nurse sticks a swab in there. They go, come back in 2 hours when we've sent it to the lab, and they find out what I've got so that I can then get the drug or the antibiotic specifically for that. They just, I'm now ranting. You go to the dirtbag National Health Service, and they didn't even swab Watson, who tried to get well for 2 weeks. And he goes in there, trying to get in for 2 weeks, and he gets in there, and they just go, here's a little pack with some aspirin and some stuff in it. You're going to be all right. And he's like, you're not going to check me? You're not? No. And then he starts going in saying, okay, I want the form where I can go see a private doctor. You have to get their permission. This is the stinking nanny state that socialist filth creates. And again, the well-meaning socialists, some of them are intelligent, they're smart like Tarpley, but they just don't understand. But the bankers understand how this works. They understand full well what they're doing. And there's this trust of the state. There's this. Take Tarpley. I'm going to get him on sometimes. I had him on last hour, and I like Tarpley a lot. He's a funny guy, smart guy. But, you know, he comes here, and he's like, I like Diet Coke. I like McDonald's. I like GMO. It's no problem. What are you going to do, Alex? Oh, vaccines are good. Get your flu shot. And I'm like, you know all about eugenics and all of this, but it's like some kind of thing of, like, believing because it's proletariat that it's, like, somehow good because it's the government, and let's all go do something collective. It's some kind of, I mean, they just don't get it. They're missing something in their mind that historically lets them see what's happened, and it's so weird. It's so weird. So I don't hate Democrats or liberals or socialists and people. A lot of them mean well, but they just don't get it. Just like Republicans don't get it. They can make all these excuses about what John Roberts did. That's exactly what I expected. I knew one of those Republicans would defect because that's what the system needed. This is about foreign banks getting us totally dependent. And I'm going to say this now. This is what the headline should read. No one is saying this. And this is in plain view. I've been saying for 2 years this is a direct tax to the bankers who own the insurance companies over and over and over and over again. In fact, guys, just search the term. Obamacare is tax to bankers. Infowars.com. I mean, I'm sure we've named one of the videos that because I know I've said it hundreds of times on air. And now it's finally admitted what it is. And it's not about how I'm right. This is in plain view. They lobby to make you buy it from them, and the government calls it a tax. And if you don't, the Uncle Sam with the IRS collection agency for the Federal Reserve comes and takes your money. So Obamacare is a tax to the Federal Reserve. Everybody's saying it's a tax to the government. It's a tax to the Federal Reserve. Sure, people that are uninsured and stuff, the government's going to be jerking stuff out of your bank account, out of your check, and then you'll get government care. But the rest of it is forcing everyone onto it. So it's a government tax and a Federal Reserve tax. I'm now at the rant point here. And again, this is all run by a bunch of criminals that ship hand grenades to Mexico. I mean, these are terrorists. They're capable of anything. You're not going to play games with this system. They all need to go to jail. And by the way, the truth is starting to come out. I've got a London Telegraph article here. Is it time to consider locking up bankers? Absolutely. Now you're starting to talk. And I don't mean the banker down the street that gives you a loan to buy a tractor or a car or a business. I'm talking about the big 6 mega banks, the ones that lobbied in unison for this Obamacare. And that's all I need to know about it being bad. Okay, now I'm out of control. Let's go ahead and take a phone call here. We'll go to Frank, Ricardo, Matt, Isabella, Carolyn, and others. Frank in Washington, D.C., the District of Slimebag Criminals. You're on the air. What's your take on all this?
Hey, Alex, I want to know what you think about the possibility of Justice Roberts being on heavy medication when he made this.
It's admitted he's on medication. Do you know what anti-seizure medication, the type that he was reportedly on, Depakote and other stuff, turns into a zombie? Listen, I said back at the time when they were having him approval, he looked like he was on a bunch of meds. I mean, I've been around drug heads. He looks like a stinking junkie. I'm sorry, go ahead.
He's got that look in his eyes, and
it looks like I want to slap him upside the head. I'm sick of all these dumb people. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
That's just what I think's going on. I think he's on the meds. He's in the pocket. I'll take my response off the air.
No, I hear you. I think you just said it. I mean, he's just another ding-dong. Look who they put in there. They're a bunch of weirdos, like a bunch of Igors or something, in the little clown outfit, little black outfits. Let's talk to Ricardo in New York. You're on the air. Go ahead.
Hey, Alex. First of all, I wanted to say I really agree with everything you're saying about this and your points and stuff. And I actually had something I wanted to say that I was going to say earlier, but you're kind of running short on time and you cut me off.
Go ahead, and I'm going to cut you off now, sir. We're talking about health care. I remember you. Go ahead and say it. Go ahead. What is it?
Everybody
wants me to screen their call on air. We don't screen them, brother.
Well, I'm part of a resistance team. Like, my friends and I are part of a resistance team.
Good.
And we have something that's sort of urgent that we'd like to talk to you about, like, privately after the show.
Oh, yeah. Listen, I appreciate your call, sir. I can hardly talk to my wife after the show. Okay? I got stuff lined up from here to Timbuktu, but let me just say this, and I don't physically mean I want to slap Roberts upside the head. I mean figuratively, these people that are in these dazes everywhere, just shuffling around. I'm tired of you. My dad's got a dental office, so they mail in those Southern Priority Law Center intelligence reports. They send them to barbershops everywhere, and it's like Alex Jones, evil leader of horribleness, and imagines there's a world government forming, and here's a law enforcement CD that comes with it. I gave it to Kurt earlier in the week. We haven't done a report on it. All because I just see what's happening. I mean, a moron could see what's going on. Okay, I'm now ranting. I'm venting on air. Let's go to Matt in Ohio. Matt, you are on the air. Are you burning inside, or are you getting ready like all those Obama supporters 4 years ago about, thank you, Mr. President, I'm getting a free house and a free car now. Of course, they didn't get it, and they're not going to get free health care either unless it's, euthanasia and Prozac. What are you thinking right now? Are you pretty excited?
I'm pretty sick. I actually had an upset stomach all day yesterday, even just about all this stuff.
You don't like the IRS going to have your medical records and take money out of your account for a whole new reason? And you don't like the bankers running your life? Come on.
Absolutely not. Yeah. AKA the Inland Revenue Service.
Yes.
But anyway, there was two things that I wanted to bring up. One is actually kind of with the health care. There was a speech back in, I think, 1969 by Dr. Day that went through this entire thing that they're going to do. And I'm sure you're probably familiar with it. But, yeah, it talks about how they're going to take over health care and everything. I mean, step by step. It even has stuff above that. They said that they're going to release the new financial market on a weekend, and it's going to be like in winter. And it spells everything out. And if you've never seen it, it's something that maybe you should look up. It's definitely worth looking at. But,
I think I've heard of that speech. In fact, there's text of it? Is there a video of that?
No, there actually, when they did this speech, he asked for all recording devices to be turned off and not to take any notes, but there was one person that actually took all the notes, and he released
Well, it doesn't matter now. It all happened. I mean, they were already setting up socialist health care back in the 50s in different countries. Good points. Good to hear from you. Let's go to Carolyn in Tennessee. You're on the air. Welcome.
Hi. Alex, last time I talked to you, I was pretty upset because the hospital I was working for was going to force us to take the flu shot to maintain our position. And I wanted to talk to you about a couple things, but I wanted to fill you on what happened there. I just decided I was fed up and I left, but I don't think anybody else quit.
Well, number one, hospitals cannot make you take a vaccine. That's law. But they lie and try to tell you it's the law. Then if you say no, they go, you have to wear a mask now like you're diseased and bad because you don't take a flu shot that has never protected you from the flu. It never is the right mutation they pick a year out and is linked to all sorts of neurological problems, from narcolepsy to seizures to you name it. I mean, it's just all a hoax, all a fraud.
Well, they did it, and the last time I was in the hospital, they had one of the nurses running around with a mask on. They wouldn't let me wear a mask because I'm not allergic to eggs, and I couldn't come up with a religious, out on it. So I saw a nurse run around with a mask. She's allergic to eggs, but you told me the masks aren't any good anyway, so it's like this big farce.
Ma'am, the mask is to act like you're a leper or like, Nazi Germany wearing a yellow star. It's all theater. It's all shunning. They're like, you won't let us shoot you up with whatever we want. So now, we're going to make you wear a dunce hat. Thank you so much. All right, we're just going to go through call after call straight ahead. 800-25-99231. Let me know what you think. We're updating Infowars.com right now. I was just on DrudgeReport.com that we check continually, just like we check Infowars.com continually. And saw the big headline about, in fact, we can put it up on screen for people watching on TV, but for radio listeners, you can just go there. The big red link is wiretaps in Fast and Furious. And when I saw that, I'm like, well, yeah, didn't I see that a few days ago? Because it is now June 29th. But because the roll call link wouldn't work because it's getting, the top Drudge link's the biggest link on the internet. That's the biggest traffic link you can get. So it's shut down roll call. But I was like, wait, I already saw that. This is just confirming what's happening is the Congress and ISA into the congressional record is confirming what the Examiner broke. You got to give them credit. Back on June 12th, that indeed, in fact, they even had articles before that, that they had the recordings confirming that basically Holder was in command of the operation. Wait a minute. Guys, I asked for this earlier in the week. We're so busy we forgot. They're pulling it off YouTube. Will you go get Due to give you our reports from like 6 months ago, proof that White House was running Fast and Furious, and it's their press conferences, Janet Napolitano and Holder admitting it. We'll air those. In fact, I'll play them with Serpico when he comes up. The point is that's proof. When we don't even need wiretaps. They admit they were running the program then. They just didn't say what it entailed. And then they're like, we knew nothing. We didn't know this was happening. But the point is, that roll call link wouldn't work. So I went and found this, and Emmo's posting it right now. Revealed secret wiretap tapes, trouble for Attorney General Eric Holder and DOJ. And I've got the article here. I'm looking for who the writer is on this. I remember seeing it at the time. And its anonymous source presented secret wiretap applications last week to the chairman of the Congressional Committee, which could spell disaster to Attorney General Holder. I know who first told me about this. Now I just remembered. And they said Judge Roll getting shot and that congresswoman was actually tied to this. And then get me, we need to get on the show. What's happening is I'm just thinking this all out on air because there's no time to do it off air. Wayne Madsen. See if you can get Wayne Madsen on like the last 10 minutes of the show today, because I remember him talking about his source that had wiretaps. And it was fantastical, but I mean, this was like 3-4 months ago on the nightly news. He covered that. Wow. So the point is they've got wiretaps of this. Of course, Wayne Madsen worked for the NSA. Anonymous sources presented secret wiretap applications last week to the chairman of the Congressional Committee. And that's ISA. And now ISA went into the congressional record today and said he has these wiretaps. So the reason this news is so big that Roll Call's covering up there on Capitol Hill, they're the paper that covers that for folks that don't know. What's called Roll Call, hence how they vote. It's called the Roll Call. They're reporting that he's confirming he's got this. So that is huge news. But the story, Roll Call doesn't really have much info. The story's in the Examiner. And I wonder how they got all this. Anonymous sources presented secret wiretap applications last week to the chairman of the Congressional Committee, which could spell disaster to Attorney General Eric Holder, Fast and Furious defense. The evidence reveals high-level Department of Justice officials approved the gun-walking tactics that could have led to the death of U.S. Border Patrol agent. It's more than one. The committee has been trying for 15 months to get information from Holder, who has used every legal and arguably illegal means to stall the committee from furthering their investigation with information from the Department of Justice. Man, this is turning into Nixon stuff, but Nixon was just stealing some medical records. According to The Hill, indicate the secret documents reveal high-level DOJ officials knew about the approval for the gun-walking tactics. Yesterday, Representative Darrell Issa said the investigation panel would vote next week to hold Holder in contempt of Congress. And again, they did that later. Took about 2 weeks, a week and a half. The Justice Department is out of excuses, he went on to say, and it goes on to talk about the reported wiretaps. So there you go. And again, I don't have enough writers. I'm trying to hire all these reporters. I need to hire more writers who understand all this, just because the guys I have are great, but they're busy just posting stuff, writing stuff. Because we haven't even tooted our horn, which is not what we wanted to do. You can get killed doing this. But we haven't even put out our articles now that the Washington Post is responding to White House drug dealing in Fast and Furious, but acting like it's a conspiracy theory when it's been in major newspapers. Again, Chicago Tribune, El Paso Times, things like that. By the time it hits the pages of the Washington Post publication, foreignpolicy.com, it's just like, oh, well, Wayne LaPierre says he thinks it's true, and so does a big libertarian banker that this writer met with. And, you know, yeah, it's common knowledge they think in Mexico the U.S. government runs it. Yeah, the criminal elements. I mean, this stuff is so near the surface now. We are just millimeters from all of this coming out. Millimeters from all of this coming out. So we'll get the article out of Roll Call, the link to it, but it's down, but we were able to get the text part of that, and then we'll put it up there with a link to the Examiner up at Infowars.com right now. Kurt Nimmo is doing that. I think the headline we're going to have is something like Issa confirms wiretaps, Fast and Furious wiretaps. I mean, it's bombshell, because before this was just floating around. Now it's in the record. So that is big news. Again, this is just so much is coming in at us now. And House could arrest Holder with inherent contempt power, or they could have a grand jury impanel in the District of Columbia, District of Criminals. We also now have the agent who started Fast and Furious defending the gun-running operation. Amazing. Let's go to your calls as promised. Isabella in California, you're on the air. Yeah, you know, these calls have just been all over the map today. Sometimes they're pure gold. Sometimes they're just like incoherent, timid, or not there. Ma'am, are you there?
Hello?
Hello? Yeah, go ahead.
Hi, Alex. I'm Isabella. I'm 11 years old, and I'm from California.
Okay, well, welcome. It's good to have an 11-year-old calling in.
Yeah, I actually understand what you're saying. My dad and I listen to you all the time.
Are you there with your parents?
Yeah.
Okay, good. I'll make sure you have permission to call in. Well, what do you think about what's happening in the IRS and the Federal Reserve to run your health care now?
Well, I'm a little shocked that the judicial branch actually approves of it, and in school they're actually pushing us to like Obama. They're pushing us to do certain things, like we have to listen to a speech, and I wanted to go to the bathroom, but they wouldn't let me. They said to me exactly, sit down.
Now, they make you listen to the great communist leader, but expanding on that, I mean, what's wrong with Kim Jong-il? But I shouldn't be sarcastic. You're 11, so you may not get the humor. You're out in California where they try to give you shots without your parents' consent, without your parents saying it's okay. Are they trying to make you take vaccines at the government facility?
Yeah, they are. I went to the doctor's office a couple months ago, and they said, oh, you have to have an appointment to get this vaccine, this and this and this. And no, we never went to my appointment because my dad said it's horrible. It can make you go mentally insane. Let's just say that. And,
well, it could certainly screw your brain up, yes. What do you think of government-run health care? What'd you call in about today, Isabella?
Well, certain, like how they're just pushing Obama, and they're pushing this and that, and health care, and same gender marriage. Like my little sister's gym teacher said she's getting married to a girl, another girl. And
well, I mean, that's what it's all about, is targeting children, and that's where these type of people go and work, and they want to go over to your little sister. How old is your little sister?
She's 7.
And she wants to indoctrinate her. You know, it's one thing if she wants to go off and do something sexual herself as an adult, but I can't even, you're 11, I shouldn't even. The point is, they shouldn't be talking to you about this or your sister. And again, I understand they've wrecked the economy where most parents have to put their children in a government re-education camp. But have your parents gone and said anything to them about them trying to screw your sister up?
No, they just they're like, just don't listen to it. It's dumb how they're just trying to do that.
I mean, the point is they shouldn't be there talking about that to children. And the fact that we now have to talk about it because they've brought it up trying to destroy your innocence. And look at how they're destroying our society. Everybody who pushes this system, it's destroying us. It's not good. Listen, you're going to win by never using drugs, never taking their prescription drugs, being healthy, and helping people in your community. Don't let them destroy you. And it sounds like you've got good parents, though, that they have you listening to the show.
Yeah, no, I'm always listening to it. And it's just it's stupid how the school's trying to brainwash it. They're trying to make a monopoly out of everything. Like Obama's trying to monopoly his health care.
Everything. Well, listen, you've got to do this. Just take material to school. They're going to try to stop you from educating people, and then you make that a bigger issue. Don't conform to their re-education camp. If you've got to be in a re-education camp, do what you're doing, resist it, point it out. Like the teachers say, you'll be arrested if you talk bad about Obama. Al Gore goes to the schools and says, tell your parents what to do. They want to destroy your family. These are brainwashed minions of the system. And, you know, the fact that you've got to be in their camp can be turned towards good if you use it to wake people up. God bless you. Winning and staying out of trouble will defeat the scum. Thank you for calling. Okay, let's talk to Robert in Texas. Robert, you're on the air.
Alex, great show today. Thanks for having me on. I was able to sneak past Alan Colmes and Laura Ingram's call screeners and drop some builder bombs, some Bilderberg info on their shows live on the air. I got that video up at Funkmaster5 YouTube channel. Alan Colmes was actually hilarious. He got mad and just started attacking me and calling me stupid because he really had no rebuttal for the information.
Well, good job. You know, all these guys still say world government doesn't exist, as it's in all the newspapers as a solution to all our problems. I mean, when you bring up Bilderberg Group, for years they said it didn't exist. It really upsets them that they've defended the facade, and now the facade is collapsing.
Just watch how they react. That's why I do these videos, because people have to see the way these shills react when their disinformation is broken up with true information. They go ad hominem and attack you, or they try to cut you off and hang up on you on as quick as they can. And there is a lot behind it. You had a record protest this year and hardly any media coverage, and then when you call on their shows and talk about it, they freak out. They panic. So
I hear you, brother. God bless you. Keep up the good work. That guy has called into so many national shows, and that's something I ask listeners to do. I don't talk about this enough. We're putting it all on the line, and we're expending the funds we've accrued to hire. I think I'm going to hire like 4 reporters/editors. I announced the female winner last night, but we're going to try to hire 2 or 3. Depends on how much they want to be paid or whatever. I've got to figure out our budget, and then tonight on the Nightly News, I'll announce the male winner, because we're hiring a male and female reporter. But they're all so great. I want to hire a bunch of people. And then out of the pool of dozens and dozens of great people from Tennessee to Virginia, from California to Canada and Australia, I want to get people to be reporters. And again, the sky's the limit if we just can organize things. But then you've got to check their reports, and so we're having to put more editorial control into the office and things, because I like to just hire folks I can totally trust and pretty much turn them loose. But sometimes I can't even trust myself because things are moving so fast. You start making mistakes. But we're trying to go to the next level. So spread the word about Infowars.com. Spread the word about PrisonPlanet.tv. Spread the word about the free podcast on the Listen tab. Spread the word about our Facebook and our Twitter, Real Alex Jones. Please get the word about the word out about what we're doing, because we are busting our hind ends so hard. We also had phase 1 for the winners of the Obama dictator contest, exposing what a fraud he is. Hundreds of videos came in. Incredible job. Phase 2 is $10,000. You've got till next Friday to get it done. That's all at Infowars.com, so find out more about that. And I will announce the male winners today. I couldn't decide last night. I barely had time when I did the nightly news to finally choose the female winner and the runners-up. And then now we've got to choose the male reporter. And I've now decided, but I've got to, at the end of the show today, go codify some things and some other issues. But we're going to be announcing that. And I need to hire some more writers. Not just folks who have their own blogs and we pick their stories up. That's great, but there's lots of stuff that I know is going on and people get on and investigate and report on. I mean, I want a couple more reporters. I need a couple more video editors. I need a couple more graphics people with video and websites and everything. I'm so busy, I never even cut new ads, you know, for products and videos or for sponsors. I never even plug stuff hardly anymore. You know, I'll go a couple days sometimes without plugging books or videos. Then you'll hear me do a whole show where, you know, I kind of infomercial for an hour. And that's just to catch up to try to get the funds in to do all this. And we've got 3 million listeners a day conservatively, 15 million a week listen one way or the other. You count YouTube and everything else. And that's pretty much in North America. There's millions overseas. But we're trying our best. And we know the responsibility we've got. We've got a platform here. And we've got to do a better job. I'm talking about myself. I've got to realize consciously every minute how big a deal this is. But I'm asking you, the listeners, call in to good talk radio shows, bad talk radio, establishment, anti-establishment. So many radio stations. And I started this 5 years ago so I could do a Sunday show 5 years ago so that stations could take that and test it. And it's been an incredible success, but now it's accelerating. Big stations. You know, big stations, but always independents. It's not the big chains don't pick us up, but the big independents now are putting us on Sunday and seeing explosive results, and ratings increase very quickly, and are like, wow. See, right now we're reaching the real danger threshold. I mean, here's an example: WNOX, #1 station in Knoxville. We've got a great station, WBCR, we've been on like 12 years, outside town that goes into town. It's gotten ratings over the years when it had no ratings before I was on there to speak of. It had listeners, but, you know, wasn't really showing up big in the book. Its ratings went up. That got WNOX's attention. They put it on Sunday, one Sunday, and I was on their show this morning, the morning show. They said never has the station had a response like that to somebody. You see, that's what's happening. Positive. And so they're like, we want to get you on weekdays. You see, that's how that works. That's happening everywhere. I mean, imagine. I mean, I'm going on multiple news stations every week now, and they're big ones. It's just amazing. Ladies and gentlemen, we are back live. I'm going to take your calls a little bit in this segment and the next. And Frank Serpico is joining us, and we'll just cover the general culture of out-of-control corruption with him. But just briefly getting back to the broadcast, the things I talk about sound really scary and crazy, and I wish that they weren't true. And I certainly make mistakes sometimes, but I'm the first to correct them. But the general information I cover is right down the line what's really going on in this world, and we've proven that. We know what we're talking about. We do the research. We eat, drink, sleep, and live trying to get as close to reality as we can. We all look through rose-colored glasses. But I want the truth. I want veritas. That's what delivers freedom and prosperity. Not delusion, not illusion. Reality is going to save our culture and our society, and we are going towards the icebergs. We've already hit some icebergs. And the fact that now my radio show is exploding is not something I'm like, ooh, I'm a big shot, this is great. It's the realization of, wow, the fact that I'm becoming accepted more and more shows just how much trouble we're in. It's actually very sad. And it's also very dangerous. I mean, I don't get into being followed and threatened, and stuff like that happens some. And I'm just committed to whatever happens. But just remember, this is real, folks. This is real what's going on here. And the fact that Alex Jones is becoming more and more mainstream accepted shows that people now realize we're in deep trouble because things have gotten so bad. Speaking of never plugging sponsors, we sell the best gravity-fed filter because I tested a bunch of them for myself, and it blows the competition away. It's ProPure. We have the lowest price anywhere at InfoWarsShop.com. Stainless steel gravity-fed filters. They got travel ones, big ones, baby ones. We got the Life Straw as well at the lowest price you're going to find with the Citizen Rule Books free with it. But 10% off the ProPure filters. Nobody has that at InfoWarsShop.com or InfoWarsStore.com will take you there. Or Infowars.com. Just click on the shopping cart link. And when you choose to buy high-quality products at low prices from us, it's what funds us. We're not funded by the Rockefellers or NPR or the New World Order. We're funded by you and our sponsors and the books and videos we sell. And what do I sell and promote? Things I think that are interesting, like Dreams from My Real Father by Joel Gilbert, which is chillingly convincing. That's my dad's quote. I said, what'd you think of the film? He goes, chillingly convincing that Frank Marshall Davis is really Obama's dad, and the whole Kenya thing that they put out on their letterhead and NPR and that she announced at speeches and everything was the cover for who his real dad was. So, yeah, they're hiding who his real identity is and all the birth certificates and stuff and putting out fake ones because it's Frank Marshall Davis. Wow, that's just how these guys operate. I mean, I always said I don't know the truth about who he really is, but he's covering something up. Well, now we know. So there you have it. That's also available at InfoWarsShop.com or by calling 888-253-3139. By the way, it's sold out everywhere. We happen to buy so many of them. We have them. Nobody else does, but they're printing more right now. We have them discounted at InfoWarsShop.com. And don't forget InfoWarsTeam.com, the best vitamin and mineral supplements that I've found, all right there in one place, InfoWarsTeam.com. And please don't forget to support the sponsors of our local AM and FM stations. The fact that they've put us on is half the battle. Now it's time to tell everybody about the show. And now is the time to also support those local sponsors, or if you're a local business, don't think even a small, amount of advertising doesn't help, and a lot of folks get involved. It's your duty, folks, to support this message getting out if you believe in it. You'd have to be dumb not to. This stuff's out in the open now. We'll be right back. It clicked that Wayne Madsen 3-4 months ago, maybe longer, on the nightly news, said he had confidential federal informants, that there were wiretaps of Attorney General. See, it's not just a high-level Justice Department source. It's supposedly of him, that they killed Judge Roll and tried to kill Giffords because they were investigating it. Then I talked to some state legislators and people in New Mexico who said that was the word they had heard, because this was going on all over the West Texas, New Mexico, into Arizona. It's just Madsen is so wild, man. I mean, the stuff he talks about sometimes sounds so wild, and it turns out to be true. He did work for the NSA, all that. I mean, it is just crazy. It is just crazy because now they're revealing secret wiretaps. It's been read into the congressional record that they got Holder. I mean, this is the White House could stage terror attacks, anything, a new war to distract from this. This is just wild. This is absolutely wild. But again, he's the sacrificial political lamb now that they want to divert us off of the socialist healthcare thing that is being spun as a victory because it'll get Romney in, who authored it. I mean, talk about delusion. And I understand politically, yes, that's true. It would probably get Romney in. But Obama's just a puppet. The system, the banks wanted this. Okay, that's enough. I'm ranting. Courtney in Virginia, up there by the scene of the crime. You're on the air. Welcome.
Hi. Thank you, Alex. It's good to be on. I've been listening for a while, but it's my first time calling in. So.
Thank you for putting up with me. I know I'm obnoxious. Go ahead.
No, so, I mean, I appreciate the emotion, at least, It's different than what you see on the zombie mainstream, that's for sure.
We're here to get you out of the zombification, yes.
Yeah, and your broadcasts have definitely played a large part. I wanted to kind of throw something out there and see if it was something you had considered. I have a sales and marketing background, so I tend to think of how I can generate more leads or more people. And when this Obamacare ruling came out, I didn't see much of a silver lining, but I did see maybe an opportunity for you if you were to maybe devote like a segment of your regular broadcast to like Obamacare 101, or what's in the bill, the implications, we could maybe reach out.
Sure, basically they can change it whenever they want, however they want. It's a Federal Reserve takeover of 35 million people, but it also takes over the general health care system. It lets the IRS, you have to file with them the type of health care you have. They can now take money out of your account. I mean, it's just the IRS and the nanny state sticking their hand down your pants like the TSA, basically.
Absolutely. And but I think, you know, because there's a large segment of people and who are still caught in the left-right paradigm, so they, you know, may identify themselves as, you know, with the GOP or Republican, who are semi-awake but, you know, have the potential to go back to sleep or you know, along those lines. But Obamacare is definitely one of those issues that a lot of people are up in arms about, and for good reason. So I was just kind of positioning that to you, that maybe if you were to do just a portion of your broadcast to Obamacare and consolidate all of the information, that we, the listeners, could spread the word that it's happening and get more people to tune in who wouldn't otherwise know of you or necessarily tune in.
No, you're right. On issues of Obamacare, gun restrictions, anything, we should, and we do write articles about it, but that boil it all down. But I think we posted an article this morning, you know, basically titled, you know, 20 Reasons Why Obamacare is a Disaster. And I think that's a good article to go read. It's now scrolled off into the featured archive, but there's that red link that says breaking. That's the RSS feed. Key to click on that red link at the top of Infowars.com to just see everything that's been up there in that day. And there's also top story archive, because there's so much that's going up there, it just scrolls off. But that's a great point. Thank you so much. Frank Serpico, legendary police officer, whistleblower, is going to be with us to talk about his experiences with corruption and ways to turn it around. And then we're going to have Wayne Madsen pop in briefly at the end. Eric Blair, a.k.a. George Orwell, wrote that in a world of universal deceit, telling the truth is a revolutionary act. And Frank Serpico is probably one of the most famous police officers in U.S. or world history. Of course, he's had big movies made about him with Al Pacino playing the part of Frank Serpico. And he joined us last year for a visit, and we've got him for about 45 minutes or so today. The last few minutes, we're going to have an update on the secret wiretaps of Eric Holder being revealed. That story at the Hill crashed. We were able to find a blog copy of it and posted it up at Infowars.com if you want to read that. This is really coming to a head very, very quickly with talk of the House going to the grand jury in the District of Columbia and calling for criminal charges. This is getting very Nixonian. And we'll talk about general corruption. You know, I wanted to get Frank Serpico on about police corruption, what he witnessed in general society, because last time we talked mainly about his story. But there's so much happening. I just want to get his view overall on the state of the world today. He doesn't really need any introduction, but he joined the Newark Police Department in '59, a police officer for 12 years. His attempts to report police corruption to his superiors and the department fell on deaf ears until he was shot, basically over to boil it all down. And then he moved to Switzerland for a while, and I could say a lot more about him, but best-selling books have been written about him, big blockbuster Hollywood films. But he's a pretty humble guy. Frank, good to have you back on with us today. I appreciate you joining us.
Hey, Alex, it's a pleasure. And the first thing I want to do is apologize for the last show when my phone went bust and I found myself screaming into the wall phone there. So how's the transmission today?
It is good, sir. The transmission is super duper, and it's good to have you. Frank, I want to ask you out of the gates, instead of asking questions, what is front and center on your radar screen right now? We haven't talked before this interview. What is front and center in your mind right now?
Well, first of all, when you started the show, you mentioned the name Orwell?
Yes, sir.
Did you mean George Orwell, the guy who wrote 1984?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so we know where we're at, you know. And foremost on my mind is that you can't trust the government, you can't trust the media, and you can't trust the medical profession. And I want to say, I mean, there are always exceptions to the rule, but, you know, what happens is you have these pundits, they get their degrees and they write their books, and they change history. They're revisionists. So you got to be careful, you know, what you're reading and who wrote it and what their intention is. So we were talking about Fast and Furious, and I was wondering how many of your listeners remember the Iran-Contra affair with Ollie North and Israel, you know, delivering guns to Iran, and then also Israel sinking an American, the USS Liberty, and then all kinds of cover-ups were written. They didn't know it was an American ship, but I heard one of the men on board saying he could see the pilots as they flew by. And the amazing thing is what this government allows others to get away with when they slaughter Americans and they claim to have our best interest at heart. So what I'm saying is, no, you can't trust the government. If they told me the sun was shining, I'd bring my umbrella out.
You know, you make the parallel to Iran-Contra, that's guns out of the country, drugs into the country. Now even the Washington Post is having a report on the fact that Fast and Furious has connections to narcotics. It came out in federal court. They were authorizing cartels to bring drugs in, that the feds are arming street gangs in the U.S. I mean, literally, Fast and Furious is the tip of the iceberg. From your decades of studying this and living it, and I mean, your words last time, you said almost all the detectives around you were on the take or corrupt. I said, what was the percentage? You said basically all but I. What would you call this system?
Correction there. You said tip of the iceberg. I want to make that the tip of the dung heap. But like I say, I hear sometimes cops, they say to me, oh, you're... It's just like if you speak up, they say you're anti-American. I say, no, I'm just anti-corruption. I'm not anti-police, I'm anti-corruption. Just last week, a New York City police detective gave me his shield, his detective shield, and his patrolman shield that was awarded to him by his narcotics squad when he retired. And I don't know how many of your listeners know about the Palladium murder, and the gentleman that I'm speaking of, and others that I will speak of, I say they are truly worthy of the title of New York's finest and the world's best detectives. But it seems they are at a minimum, or if they're not, their buddies are afraid to speak up because they will be made examples of. And in this case, the detective I'm speaking of, and your listeners can go online, his name is Bobby Adelorado. And he found that two men were charged with murder. They weren't even at the scene, and they served 10 years and then 2 years more in a penitentiary. And he fought not to keep them in there, but to get them out of there. And that's what he did. So there are good police out there. But the problem is that at the top, like with Bobby's case, he becomes the victim. And in cases that are going on in New York City today, that cops that are exposing these illegal search and seizures, where last year alone 700,000 stops and frisks were performed by the New York City Police Department. And one of the men who's been suspended and because he refused to give people summonses for not committing any crime. And in one case, the lieutenant said to him, give that guy a ticket. And he said, what for? He said, an unlicensed dog. The guy said he doesn't even have a dog. But, you know, who's going to contest it when a cop gives you a ticket What are you going to do? Bring your dog to court? And, so the system is broken, and the men that want to speak out, they become the victims. And there's others, I don't want to talk too much about them because, only the worst will happen to them.
Well, that was my next question. That was my next question. A legendary Frank Serpico, a police officer, whistleblower hero, shot and almost killed for telling the truth, exposing government drug dealing. That was my next question, and it seems like you're getting there before I even ask it. Compared to the incredible corruption you saw in the New York Police Department, now with your sources, people that obviously come to you, is it worse today, or how is the corruption different?
Well, this is what I'm told by men in the street. The corruption is different, is that cops don't want to be cops and bosses don't want to be bosses. Nobody wants to take any chances. Nobody wants to stick their neck out. They just want to collect their paycheck and go home. True, in my day, they had what they called a pad. That was actually a pad with a list of all the numbers, runners, and the banks and the dealers, who paid off. And if you didn't pay off, you'd get arrested, and sometimes worse, and intimidated. And if they found that you didn't have all your employees listed, I'm talking about the underworld, you would get fined. They ran it like a business. Now, there are a lot of police that say, "Oh, come on, a cop would never do that. Drugs, that's horrible." But what happened, to show you how the line is so thin, I started out in plain clothes. That was vice and gambling. And you would get an envelope every month without doing anything. In fact, for doing nothing, and for not arresting the people that were violating the law. So the rule in the police department at the time was you had to serve 4 years in plain clothes, and then they said if you keep your nose clean, you will be automatically made a detective. So here's what happens, and they had this expression, the grass eaters and the meat eaters. And the grass eaters were the ones that just grazed. They might take traffic money or gambling money or prostitution money, and they'd say, well, that's just vices that people want anyway, but never touch that dirty drug money. So here's what happened. After 4 years of grazing on a salary that a police officer isn't accustomed to, and these guys would hire yachts on the weekend. They would come to work, as in the case of a Dowd and the Dirty 30. They would sell guns, shields, narcotics. One guy sniffed cocaine off his cruiser, off his police car, and he would never have been caught if it wasn't for a sting operation by another agency in another county where he left the city limits to go and squeeze some more drug dealers. So this isn't something that was caught by the NYPD themselves. And what I'm saying is, after you get used to that lifestyle, for 4 years, all of a sudden, you're in narcotics. Now you think all of a sudden you're going to change your lifestyle? So now you become the meat eater, and the meat eaters are bloodthirsty, carnivorous, and they'll do anything for a buck.
And now our government is converting from being good old boy boss hog, or what I would term a boss hog is what you call a grass eater, to now just savage, out of control, eyes bugging out. Listen, I've been to New York quite a few times, and I've seen people ask for directions who aren't from New York and be screamed at. And just the example of, a corruption accelerating. And I've seen videos of our reporters. In one case, Luke Radowski was protesting out front Building 7, talking about Larry Silverstein's involvement in 9/11. And the security guards come out looking like guys out of Goodfellas, smoking pipes. The classic thug with a pipe thinking he's a gentleman, and going with a cartoon gangster accent, going, you know what's going to happen? We're going to call the police and say your camera's a bomb. You're going to get charged with terrorism. And I know you're not a terrorist, but you're going to get 30 days in the hole. The cops show up, the gangsters, literally out of central casting. I mean, if I was a Hollywood director, I would hire them for Sopranos. Then commands 20 police or so who grab him and take his camera and say it's a gun and a bomb. I mean, listen, I have this on tape. They didn't even bother to erase the tape. They frame him on tape and don't even care and don't even erase the tape. That, to me, showed such incredible hubris that they, and now I see footage that our correspondent shoot in New York, where the police walk around with cigarettes and cigars, arresting ABC News reporters. There's footage of that online, with their hats on sideways. I mean, now it's becoming comical. And now I'm seeing in other parts of the country. Take Seattle, where I saw articles even in their local paper where the police in some areas own half the bars because they will sell themselves drugs in the bathroom and then take the people's bars. So now they're not even shaking down criminals, which is the old excuse, as you know, for grazers or whatever. So they're becoming survival of the fittest. The bigger the meat eater, the more power they get. And so now what a meat eater would have been 20 years ago is now a grazer. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah. There was one precinct commander. He even complained to this guy and said, if it wasn't for that effing Serpico, I would have been a millionaire today. So it shows you the amount of money that's floating out there. And in the New York Times op-ed Monday, June 18th of this year, is an article there called Policing by the Numbers. And it's written by a John Eterno, who is a retired New York City police captain. He's a professor of criminal justice and all that stuff. But he says, an officer assigned to an impact zone, a high crime area, told me that the Constitution, this quote, the Constitution has been thrown out the window when it comes to stops. He is given strict daily quotas and asked at the end of his tour about his numbers. An officer who fails to meet the required number for the day is berated, sometimes in front of peers, not allowed time off, and given unpalatable work assignments. Nothing is asked about maintaining order, interacting with the community, or other kinds of police works. The result of this performance culture, needless summonses for minor violations, putting one's feet on the subway seats, playing chess in a park, failing to wear seatbelts, and other quota-driven activity, this does not make for efficient policing, etc. So that's where it is today. Another police officer said to me, our cop today is nothing more than an armed tax collector. I mean, these people who have legitimate permits, these vendors on the street trying to make a living, they're given fines at times up to $1,000. How are they ever going to pay these fines? And the crazy thing is, if you go out of the city and you can make a turn, you can make a right turn on a red light when it's safe. In the city, you try that, and the ticket is like $100. They tow your cars away. It's just...
Now, listen, I talked to people that I've known for like 16 years. He owned a couple dump trucks, made a decent living. Now he's just out of business because of the fines and fees. They'll even pull a new truck over and say there's dirt on the bumper here in Austin, and the cops just don't care. People are going bankrupt. Only big companies can come in and then pass on the expenses to people that hire them. It's destroying the economy, and the government loves it. They love it. It's just, I mean, they're going to kill this country.
Yeah. This guy goes on to say, policing in a democracy is not easy, nor is it meant to be. Reducing crime numbers is simple if you disregard basic rights, ignore victims, mandate quotas, and manipulate numbers. The lunacy of this policy performance culture can end only with stranger leadership, greater transparency, stronger leadership, that is, which would be strange, greater transparency and more meaningful relationships with communities. And then it says it is worth heeding what Detective Frank Serpico testified on police corruption told the Knapp Commission in 1971. Quote, the department must realize that an effective continuing relationship between the police and the public is more important than an impressive arrest record. And that's what I became a cop for. You know,
Frank, where is it all going? Where is it all going? Because you're in one jurisdiction and the police are changing flat tires, helping people, actually going after bad guys, but that's more and more rare. And you go in another jurisdiction, I don't care if it's in the South, the North, the West, and the police are crazed, wild-eyed thugs who instinctively, I can just by their bearing, automatically tell her the enemy of society. I mean, where is this going from your research and your experience if the corruption continues to grow this fast?
Well, it's not going good if it's not stopped, because this kind of activity doesn't happen if it's not condoned at the top. For example, the commissioner in New York in charge of press relations, you know, he commented about me. He says my comments are born out of ignorance from being away for 40 years. And my response to him is, well, what's his excuse? Doesn't he watch and see, you know, all these videos that are being taken by independent people of harassment and
well, that's my question. How could police walk up on a video and say, we're going to say your camera is a gun and a bomb, and frame someone on tape and not even care to erase the tape? I mean, where this confidence says they're going to get promoted for stomping on somebody's rights and setting them up.
Well, I don't know if you know the case of Adrian Schoolcraft, a police officer who refused to go along, and they broke into his house at night, handcuffed him behind his back, and took him to the psycho ward where he was handcuffed to a gurney for 6 days. And then you read the police blog and nobody wants to believe it, because you can't just psycho a guy with, you know, but if it's the mayor and the police commissioner who's behind it, then, you know, who's going to say no? And so it's really terrible. And what amazes me is that the people aren't up in arms as they did in Egypt. You know, you think the people would have had enough and say no more, but somehow I'm sure you're familiar with young Marcus Tullius Cicero, who back in, it was 70 years before the birth of Christ, and the Roman Republic, the foremost power of its day, had reached its zenith, and its leadership had attained unbound wealth and unstinted power. The rulers were intolerant of restraint, indifferent to demands.
I'll tell you what, Frank Serpico, stay there, got to go to break. Come back with a quote. Well, that's perfect timing. I was talking to Frank Serpico, and I said, you know, what's the bottom line? He said it's mind control. And then that bumper plays. Frank, repeat what you were saying off air. I mean, on all those issues. You were saying, well, your show says it all. War on for your mind. What's going on here?
Well, the human race has been pawned to the highest bidder. You know, I mean, it amazes me that these young kids kowtow, you know, to all these, you know, the Pope, the Queen, the media, the government. You know, the Queen, who is one of the, whatever she is, she's certainly not a princess. You know, the Queen Bee with the bees works more than the rest of the workers. These people who have exploited the world and races, that people should curtsy to them. I mean, it is mind-boggling. It's insane that they think that they're better than the rest of the human race. I mean, you know what I'm talking about, where, you know, if you're with the prince or you're with them, you have to curtsy. my God, I mean, when are the people going to wake up? You know, they're being held prisoners in their own minds.
You're absolutely right.
And then, you know, I get a letter from the NAACP, of which I'm a member, and, you know, I believe in equality and justice, but they say, Frank, taking a stand for what is right sometimes comes with grave consequences. Yes, that's true. And then they go, since taking office as United Attorney General, what? They're saying, sadly, extreme elements within the U.S. House are threatening the attorney. But, I mean, this, what's happening, there are no principles. It should be principles above personality. And it's all this cronyism, and I wish these young kids today, they would wake up and, well, you remember what happened at Kent State when the National Guard opened fire on its own citizens. Maybe that's what they're afraid of, but...
well, let me raise that, because it's funny you brought that up. They're announcing more and more military on the streets. Secretary of the Army wants to station a brigade in every city. It's not for Al-Qaeda now. They're little buddies they're using over in Libya and Syria. It's for us. They're announcing armed drones. They're announcing 450 million rounds of 40 cal hollow point for citizens. Homeland Security is getting mobile armored pillboxes. What do you think this whole buildup is for, Serpico?
Well, if it's the way it's happening, it's not for the good. It's to suppress the masses. We got another Syria. You know, it's going to be the U.S. is, they say the United States, but the people have to get united against oppression is what they have to do, and this is what the government is afraid of. So they're going to, you know, control the people by force of arms. And, you know, I mean, I live in a country, I mean, you know what they say, I can skin a buck, I could run a trout line, and a country boy can survive, you know. The people are arming up. They don't trust the government, so, you know, it's not just a few. It's those that are awake, and, you know, are they going to say that I'm talking, you know, accuse me of trying to incite the masses? You don't know what this government is capable of. And let me tell you, you know, you were saying I was in Switzerland. You know why I left Switzerland? Because I was run out by the FBI because they wanted me to come back to New York and be a part of their sham, and I refused, and they sent out a subpoena and said I would be held in contempt if I refused, and so I had to take it on the lam out of Switzerland. But again, you have one country, you have another country. I ended up in Holland, and I ended up pulling a little kid out of the canal that had fallen into the canal, and a crowd, you know, assembled, and then the police, and I snuck out through the crowd before the police got there. And then a couple of nights later, there was a burglary in progress across the canal because I was living on the canal and I had my dog with me, and he was barking, and I looked, and call it muscle memory or reflex, I called the police, and then I went out there, and they had the guy and with all the booty, he took off the boat, and I was really impressed by the way that he was handled by the police. And the next morning, 2 detectives came to my door and escorted me to police headquarters. And they brought me through the cells, and I thought, oh, they're going to throw me in the flammer. But at least I thought, look at this. You can eat off the floor here, stainless steel. And it was civil, not like the dungeons they have in New York and other places. And then they didn't throw me in there. They brought me upstairs to the police commissioner. And the commissioner, a gray-haired gentleman, he jumped to his feet. He reached out his hand and he said, Mynheer, sir, may I shake your hand? And I thought, what? Am I dreaming or something? He had a copy of his book on my desk, on his desk. And I said, it's always a pleasure to shake the hand of a police officer that wants to shake my hand. And that's what I wrote in his book. And a couple of years ago when I was involved with the drug wars, the damage done, the drug wars, and it was premiering in Amsterdam. The police commissioner, the new police commissioner, came to introduce me, and he said, in 1974, I had to choose between becoming an F-16 pilot or the Sports Academy. And he says, and then I saw a movie called Serpico, and my mind was made up. So my point is, what we have to do, we have to inspire people, because by our deeds, they're like pebbles that you throw into a body of water, they make ripples. And I never would have imagined that, 30, 40 years after, people are still being inspired, and that's what the people need. They need inspiration. Well, like your show that, tells people what's really going on in the world. And, I know they play with words. They got their own vocabulary. They say freedom isn't free. You bet your ass it isn't free. You have to fight for it, but not in foreign countries. Right here in our own country, that's where you have to fight for your freedom.
Wow, Frank Serpico, this is an amazing interview. You are definitely on fire today. We're going to do Overdrive, folks. We can finish the hour with him. We're just going to go into the fourth hour with Wayne Madsen coming up, if he's able to do that. He's got the inside scoop on Fast and Furious murders, all of it. Former NSA officer and congressional reporter. Everything he told me 3 or 4 months ago, was actually about a year ago, but 3 or 4 months ago really got clear with informants and people. He had to leave the country for a while over all this. He's going to be joining us dealing with it because reportedly the White House had a hitman out after him, but once that went public, they left him alone. That's another issue. But talking about freedom not being free, they killed the D.C. madam after she was on my show, and they just throw these lies at everybody. And when everybody starts just trying to go along to get along, that's what allows corruption to run rampant. But what Frank was talking about, all the good police he's inspired, and others, and that's what you've got to do. All of us doing little things like the pebbles in a pond, but you can feel the evil intensifying right now. You can see the insane corruption. Frank, let me raise a curveball on you here, because, we didn't talk before you came on today. What about 9/11? It's been used as the foundation of everything that we see happening, the warrantless spying that's illegal, the highway checkpoints all over the country, the TSA sticking their hands down our pants. And I want to ask you about that. William Shatner now being groped by him today, leaving LAX. Here's William Shatner. Let's pull his pants down, he may be a terrorist. This training us all that we're prisoners while ignoring the real criminals that are all around us. But the official story of 9/11, now Anwar al-Awlaki, number 3 in al-Qaeda, they admit was really CIA. The head of the 7/7 bombings, they admit was MI6. Now they publicly use al-Qaeda to take over Libya and now Syria, and they admit this in the news. Well, yeah, al-Qaeda is working for us, but they're good guys. But I've got to have TSA grope my family, and William Shatner's got to have him pull his pants down because they're going in his pants. That's what they did. They went in his pants. They fell off. It happens all the time to people. Make old ladies get out of wheelchairs. I'm ranting here, Serpico. But this foundation of 9/11, what's your view on that?
First of all, I refused to fly because when I came back in the country, I was strip searched by the customs people, and they knew everything that was going on in my life with the police, which was supposed to be secret. So, but I have to say one thing, that the thing is, it's the hierarchy that forces these men to do it, like their quotas. And these guys, as they said to me, Frank, it might be rationalizing, but they say, we got our jobs, our home, we have to pay the mortgage. So they are the victims, but they just have to be strong enough. But how are you going to do it when they hold the axe over you? I wrote an article about 9/11 for Chronogram magazine way back when. I don't remember all the names and stuff now, but about the Iron Triangle, and that the night before 9/11, bin Laden's, I think it was his brother, and all these heads of state had this meeting at, I forget which hotel it was here in America.
It was the Ritz-Carlton.
Ritz-Carlton.
Yeah, no, that was in the London Guardian.
You know about that, right?
Yeah, no, Bush and all the bin Ladens, and then only they were allowed to leave the country on the day of 9/11 when all the air traffic was shut down. That's confirmed, yes.
Yeah, so wasn't that a coincidence?
Yeah. No, I mean, they blew it sky high. Yeah, it's a fact.
And then this other character, Giuliani, Rudy Giuliani, there still is hope for democracy in America. I got to say that, because there's this street artist, and his name is no relation to the show host. It's not, I think it's Dave, something, Robert Letterman or something, but anyway, he was a street artist, and he would make paintings of Giuliani, and he would call him Adolf Giuliani with a mustache, and things like that. Giuliani, the mayor of New York, had him arrested 41 times, and this street artist managed to beat him every time. So there are some good judges out there, and they have to inspire the others. We have to, there was a quote I was looking for here from Cicero, about diligence.
You're talking about the height of the Roman Empire. You were building it up, and we had to go to break.
Right. But there's I lost the quote. But in the end, he says, "And who shall say we are worthy of more?" So you can't blame nobody if you sit on your laurels and you don't do anything about it. So the people, there's strength in numbers. He says, though liberty is established by law, we must be vigilant, for liberty to enslave us is always present under that very liberty. Our Constitution speaks of the general welfare of the people. Under that phrase, all sorts of excesses can be employed by lusting tyrants to make us bondsmen. So that doesn't say it all. I don't know what does, anyway.
And of course, Cicero really helped promote the idea.
I don't know how much time we have, but it's always a pleasure talking to you and visiting your website about our great Pope and all the work he did. And that's the opiate of the masses. As I said before, the Pope, the Queen, these rock stars, the labels inside your clothes. It's the corporations that make pawns out of the public, and telling you. Then you see these guys, television guys are on public television, and with a brand new suit every time, and the commissioner too in New York City, $1,000 suits, $100 ties. They're setting a good example for tightening your belt.
What do you think about Eric Holder? From my research, he was intimately involved in Oklahoma City and in the cover-up, and it's in federal court. It was even in the Chicago Tribune and El Paso Times that the drug cartels, Sinaloa got caught with 5 tons. They're in court, and the feds come in and go, yeah, it's national security. We authorized them to bring the drugs in. And then it happened with a bunch of other cartels. And then we found out that they're giving guns to gangs all over the U.S., but also overseas. I mean, it's just, they are nothing but total gangsters.
You're talking about the government is exactly. The thing is, we never would have even probably heard about what happened in Mexico if it wasn't for the killing of the federal agent. They say nothing of the 200 other Mexicans that were slaughtered. So, body count doesn't mean anything to people that are running the show. It's collateral damage. So that's why, the NAACP says here in their letter to, however, it says the NAC supports accountability and transparency at every level. Fine. But they say, however, this crusade in Congress reeks of partisan politics. Well, I want to say, what does this letter reek of, And so everybody's using words, this cronyism, and I say let the chips fall where they may, and what we find, as I said before, is just the tip of the dung heap.
No, you're right. Justice be done, may the heavens fall. I found a Cicero quote from BC here. It says, when a government becomes powerful, period, it is a usurper which takes bread from the innocent mouths and deprives honorable men of their substance for votes with which to perpetuate itself. And because the Romans did the same thing with citizens, they would go buy votes, they would take it with welfare taxes and then go to the welfare citizens on the dole and use them to outvote other people that produced. I mean, this stuff's been going on forever.
Yeah, well, now with the internet and stuff, maybe people can, inform each other better. The other day I went on and I saw something about Kissinger, and I don't know if it was real or not, but I wanted to say something about, Kissinger, one of the biggest war criminals that ever was.
Tell you what, we're going to break. Final segment. Frank Serpico, our guest, then Wayne Madsen is coming up with breaking news on Fast and Furious and so much more. Frank, stay there. Final segment. You're a real champ. All right, I'm going into the fourth hour. Some stations carry it, some don't, but I'm going to be talking to Dean, Mello, Jake, Quince, and others that have been patiently holding. Dean listening on XM 166. We're going to him first. Got about 4 or 5 minutes left with Frank Serpico. What a legend. Like you said, we've got to inspire other people, and he gave the examples of how he inspired people and never knew he was doing it. I know he certainly inspired me. I was growing up as a child. I'm only 38. I don't know, I was probably like 12 years old or something. And my dad, went and rented Serpico and popped it in the VCR, or it was on, I don't know, HBO or something. I don't remember. I don't think we had cable when I was 12. The point is, I remember being a little kid with my dad watching it, and my dad going, this is a true story. And then I started noticing a few years later that the police were dealing drugs where I lived, outside Dallas, and then still pulling people over and harassing them. And I'd be like, you deal drugs. What are you doing asking if I have drugs? I don't use drugs. I'll kill you, kid. You're going to jail. Drag me out of the car where I was riding to school with older kids and take me to jail. And they told my dad through our lawyer, because he got contacted, and they said, we're going to kill your son if he doesn't shut up. But then later, the sheriff got busted shipping cocaine in by the FBI, who are a bunch of drug dealers, too, at the top. Frank, briefly, you wanted to make some comments. I forget about what we were talking during the break. What was
about Kissinger?
Oh, yeah, Kissinger. Go ahead.
It's just a classic example how these, terrible people are held up by our government as good people, as examples. And the other day, I don't know how old it was on the Internet, some journalist claimed he saw Kissinger being groped, and...
No. Kissinger admitted it. That happened at the airport, yeah.
Yeah, well, the thing is, I was saying, well, they had a right to, maybe he did have a weapon of mass destruction on him, because he is a terrorist. But anyway, when I went to see the blog, I was pleased to see all the comments that the people were making back and forth. The people know that he was a war criminal, and one said, winning the Nobel Prize is not hard when you are one of the founding members of the Bilderberg Zion Club, and, comments like that. So people are aware, they're not asleep. And I'm saying this is all due to the Internet, where people can, reach millions of people around the world. And anyway, in the words of James Madsen, he said, no nation could preserve its freedom in the midst of continual warfare. And that's what we're in now, continual warfare. And how much time do we have? Because I'd like to close with the words of Louis D. Brandeis, who was a secular humanist. And I think, wasn't he also on the court Louis Brandeis.
Sure, go ahead. We got about a minute.
He says we can have democracy in this country, or we can have great wealth in the hands of a few, but we can't have both.
Well, Frank Serpico, thanks to you standing up for what's right. We now know, I mean, back when you first stood up, people were like, oh, there's no such thing as cops stealing drugs. In the 50s, they said La Cosa Nostra didn't exist. Our naivete is what has allowed us to become this enslaved and our inaction. But thank you for helping pull back some very dangerous veils. And I want you to have a great weekend, and I look forward to maybe in 6 months or so.
Okay, and thanks for having me.
Oh, thank you.
Letting me say my piece.
And thank you for visiting our news website, Infowars.com. Let me say bye to you right here at the end of this segment, Frank. We'll put you on hold. Wow, there goes Frank Serpico. We're going into overdrive for Wayne Madsen, and then your calls straight ahead. It's Friday. I'll be back this Sunday, 4 to 6 p.m. Central with the Sunday show as well. All right, folks, we're into overdrive on this Friday worldwide transmission. And this happens all the time. I'll be sitting here with a guest talking or listening to a caller or reading an article, and something will click. I'll go, wait a minute. We haven't had Wayne Madsen on in like 2-3 months. But 4 or 5 interviews ago, I don't know, 5-6 months ago or longer, I know a year ago or so, he said, I have a federal informant. You know, they're being tracked. Giffords was shot, but Roll was the main target. And then I later had separate sources that confirmed that was part of a Fast and Furious cover-up. And then I remember Madsen was on, whenever it was, 4 or 5 months ago, was talking about there are reportedly wiretaps of the Attorney General. He broke that. I don't even know if he even remembers that. He has such good sources. You'll watch any national security hearing in Congress, you'll see Wayne Madsen back there in the audience. He was in anti-submarine warfare, then he worked for the NSA, RCA, a lot of other agencies and groups. And I'm not trying to toot his horn. It's just a fact that so much of what he says is so groundbreaking, and then it just kind of gets put out there, and nothing ever even gets done with the information. But I thought, let's get him on with all his new intel on Fast and Furious. And Wayne, we cover so much, we hardly even never double back to it. But when was that interview that you were bringing up? Big stuff on Fast and Furious, and there are reported wiretaps? Because I remember you saying that. Do you remember saying that?
Oh, certainly. I think it was about 3 months ago or something like that. I had an FBI confidential informant tell me that, look, this whole thing had to do with guns coming from Mexico, going to Mexico, across especially the Arizona-Mexico border. And Judge Roll and Congresswoman Giffords were actually having meetings in Phoenix about what to do with this situation. So this nutcase shows up at a campaign stop and tries to kill both of them, gets the judge, and severely injures Giffords to the point where she could not stay in Congress any longer.
Yeah, and the reason I asked when it was is I think the last time I interviewed you was about 3 months ago. But there was an interview before that. I think it's longer than, wasn't it about 6 months ago? Because I've got a bunch of interviews with you. I want to go find it and then play it on the Nightly News tonight to point out that you broke this.
Right. Well, there's a lot more to this than meets the eye. I have a story up on my website today about the fact that there are now investigations of weapon smuggling by various state National Guard personnel. There's a huge investigation now going on in California. And
you brought that up 3 months ago, and now that's in the news. But here's what I want to do. I want to go to break, come back, and have you start over, because some stations don't carry this segment. Most do. Start over with your informant, what they told you, because for those that just joined us, it's now the big headline out there, roll call reporting, that Issa, who's got his own past, was reading into the record that indeed what the Examiner said back in early July is indeed true, that there is, and all this is up at Infowars.com right now, the roll call, but also the link to the Examiner and the rest of it, that these wiretaps exist of the Attorney General. And so now that's confirmed is the point. And then I was just remembering that you had said, Wayne, in one of the interviews that, oh, they already had all the proof and wiretaps that your source had told you, which gives more credibility to what they'd said about the other issue. So I was just remembering I heard this first from you. So let's codify your thoughts on that subject, because I know I just sprung this on you, just called you, and then we'll get your take on it straight ahead. Stay with us. I'm Alex Jones. We are live. It is Friday, 29th day of June 2012. Your calls are coming up for those that have been patiently holding, like Dean in Tennessee, listening on XM 166 and others. Fast and Furious is blowing wide open. The nightmare, Obamacare, written by the insurance companies to rip everybody off, is in place. It's all going to get broken down here. But they've got him in contempt. But, I mean, Holder's just the front man for all this. Investigative journalist Wayne Madsen of WayneMadsenReport.com was on the nightly news about 6 months ago. And then he reiterated this about 3 months ago, last time he was on with us, that Judge Roll had been shot to cover up gun running through Arizona into Mexico. And since then, you know, news has come out that these different towns and cities were involved, not from Texas, from West Texas all the way to Arizona, and that had been really a hit. He has a federal confidential informant. He formerly worked, of course, for the NSA. He's a great investigative journalist. But I remember in the interview we're talking about, oh, they've got proof in Congress. I'm told they're wiretaps. So I remember you talking about that. So recap, because that means you were the first person I know of to break these wiretaps that ISA has now read into the record that indeed there were confidential wiretaps of people in the Justice Department, or proving that they knew and were directing this. I mean, this is amazing. I mean, tell us what's really going on here and how deep Fast and Furious goes.
Well, NSA has for some time had the authority to listen in, eavesdrop on the phone conversations and now the email, of course, of any government official, including the Attorney General. Now, they do that for communication security purposes, but it's obvious that they're wiretapping and they uncover any kind of information, especially that which may involve a foreign intelligence operation. They will maintain those wiretaps. Certainly NSA would be very interested in anything having to do with shipping guns to two of the worst drug cartels, the very bloody and violent Zetas and Sinaloa cartels in Mexico. But now we have a Royal Canadian Mounted Police report came out not long ago about guns being shipped up Interstate 75 from as far south as Florida into Ontario. So it's not just Mexico, it's Canada. And a couple of weeks ago, a National Guard member in North Carolina was arrested. He was with Special Operations or Special Forces for the North Carolina National Guard, was arrested for shipping guns into China, into 16 cities and provinces in China. And the FBI and the Ministry of Public Security in Beijing jointly busted that operation. So it looks like guns are being shipped out of the United States, Mexico, China for the purpose of destabilization. That would be a foreign. That would be. And
they've been catching Navy SEALs shipping hand grenades and guns that you don't get at a gun shop into Mexico. A few months ago, you talked about the Special Forces Army veterans. A gang of black guys were caught shipping them into Mexico. And drugs back in. I mean, this is just massive what's going on. So tell us about the wiretaps, though, because I remember you being the first person who was like out of the blue, and I'm like, wow, there's wiretaps. I mean, how did you get that? I mean, not who was your source, but I mean, what did they tell you?
Well, as I said, NSA always listens into the communications of government officials, and now they have even more authority under Intelligence Directive 700, which was issued by a former retired General James Clapper, the Director of National Intelligence, after the leaks on the White House kill list for the drone attacks and also the flame malware virus that infected Iranian computer systems. Now they have even more authority to do wiretaps of government officials to plug leaks. Essentially, that's what it's about. So, but they've had this for quite some time. So again, the information is that Holder and especially the people under him were being listened in on, ostensibly for communication security. But we know after the Bush administration that's just a mantra that's used to cover up listening in on government officials. It was done to Colin Powell when he was Secretary of State, and it was done to several other...
When you were at the NSA, I mean, I know you were compartmentalized, but you worked in some highly classified areas, I know, from bios I've seen out there. I mean, what was the level of spying then compared to what it is now?
Well, it wasn't. There were rules in place not to just conduct surveillance merely for political intelligence purposes, but that all changed after 9/11. Now anything's fair game. But even before 9/11, there's NSA documents to show that when she was First Lady, Hillary Clinton was being eavesdropped upon for some of her international operations she was involved with, and also former President Jimmy Carter was being eavesdropped upon when he was trying to negotiate a peace settlement in Bosnia. His phone calls were listened in on when he was in Sarajevo, the Bosnian capital. But now it's much worse. Now all you need is they've got blanket authority basically to eavesdrop on anyone, and that would include, of course, the President of the United States, again, for communication security purposes.
What does it signify? Because obviously there were gun running scandals before, and normally if Holder played the card that I predicted he would, that, hey, Bush did some gun running scandals as well, normally that would make him back off. But Issa and the Republicans aren't, which I say is a good thing overall. But what type of war is going on? What's happening right now in Washington?
Well, let's see how far Issa will go, because back when Blackwater was under investigation in 2007, when Henry Waxman was chairman of the same committee that Issa's chairman of now, Issa was a big defender of Blackwater. Now that was at the time when some ex-Blackwater employees were arrested for smuggling weapons from the United States into Iraq. And Issa came to Eric Prince, the CEO of Blackwater, came to his defense and said this was a political witch hunt against Blackwater. But if he is aware now of other information, and he actually sent a letter last year to the White House saying, hey, look, some of Waxman's questions were never answered. I'm not happy with that. I want answers. So he may be on to something, but let's see how far he goes, because I think that this is a intelligence operation, probably a very compartmentalized operation that's allowing weapons to go into Mexico, China, and now we know and it may be for purposes of political destabilization.
Well, no kidding. I mean, that's what Selica Still told us 6 years ago. He said they're training people in South Texas. When Calderon gets in, the Civil War is going to start. It's meant to destabilize and knock out cartels controlled by the Mexican government so the big banks can fully monopolize it. But those Mexican cartels, allied with their own systems, have been, in many levels, defeating the Goldman Sachs, J.P. Morgan, Wells Fargo army. And by the way, folks, it's in, if you're a new listener, you're like, well, that's quite an accusation. 2 years ago, it was in Bloomberg and Associated Press, $376 billion laundered by Wells Fargo and Wachovia in just a 2-year period. I mean, obviously, $500 billion a year in narcotics money into the U.S. is not being hidden in the crack house closets or in their mattresses.
Right. We have to remember we have a presidential election in Mexico this Sunday, day after tomorrow, where the Institutional Revolutionary Party that ruled Mexico for many years may come back into power. And the presidential candidate has talked about coming to some sort of agreement with the cartels. Now, obviously, that's not music to the ears of the people in Washington. So there'd be a great interest in trying to keep things in Mexico the way they are, with the high level of terrible violence being committed, beheadings and everything else. But this has a link, of course, to the guns that are being shipped into Mexico and were shipped under Fast and Furious. And now we have information that Governor Brown in California and Governor Perry in Texas are both investigating the involvement of their own National Guards in weapon smuggling and embezzlement of National Guard funds.
So it is getting crazy. In the few minutes we've got left, Wayne Madsen, you always drop big bombshells on us. Any other tidbits that I haven't brought up that you think are important dealing with Fast and Furious and all the rest of this?
Well, I would just keep a close eye on what happens now. Obviously, there's going to be a civil civil charges filed with the contempt resolution. The criminal thing won't go far because why would Holder want to investigate himself? It'll be referred to the U.S. Attorney for the District of Columbia, but that individual works for Eric Holder. So I think we won't see anything there. The only way we'd see any investigation is to see the independent special counsel come back, but that comes and goes depending on the political winds in Washington. We certainly had one during Watergate. We had one for Whitewater.
So basically it's about political point scoring, but it could get out of hand. You're dead reckoning. Will Obama go the way of Nixon, or does he have too much dirt on the other kleptocrats?
I think this is, we talked about Mexico, but this is a Mexican standoff. Basically, they have the dirt on one another. I don't think Issa will really go that far if he starts to expose the involvement of people, the CIA and other agencies that may be involved in this weapons smuggling for intelligence covert operation purposes.
Well, sure. I mean, we already knew years ago 8 agencies were involved. It's drugs coming back in. I mean, that's in federal court. And now we're seeing all the whitewash articles out there. This is just another Iran-Contra. Do you agree with that?
Oh, I think that's it. And, you know, the problem is when the intelligence agencies get this kind of power, which they have, they've never had this much power in the past. They're going to abuse it. They're going to take advantage of it. And we get, you know, the situation with embezzling funds like we saw during Iran-Contra.
And that's what the globalists want is everybody corrupt. Wayne Madsen, have a great weekend. Thank you so much for that report.
Good to be with you, Alex.
You bet. WayneMadsenReport.com is his site. Infowars.com is ours. Okay, we're going to go to Dean, Quentin, and others straight ahead. Stay with us. Your calls up next. Over at Examiner.com, a Terry Webster has written a pretty good boil-down article of the points I raise against government-run nightmare healthcare. It's called Jones Blast Supreme Court Healthcare Ruling. I raised that because I just happened to see the article and read over it during the break. And I noticed that a lady called earlier saying there should be a basic boil down. And we've done those, but here's a new one. It goes over it all. We'll get it linked up at Infowars.com. Let's go to Dean in Tennessee, listening on XM 166, then Quentin. Dean, welcome. Thanks for holding.
Alex, it's a pleasure to speak with you. I'm calling to ask if you think the globalists may have shot themselves in the foot by calling Obamacare a tax, because all federal taxes are required to be originated in the House of Representatives. So if Obamacare didn't originate in the House of Representatives, it should be deemed an illegal tax.
You know, I knew one version of it originated in the Senate, but didn't they then change that and go back and change it in the House? You know, that's a good point. I have to look at that, but pardon me, guys? Okay, so CJ says he followed that. I mean, my memory was they did try that, but then it went back to the House and they fully voted to basically go with that version. But look, taxes to be paid to private interest, you know, that's the issue. They're saying you pay this to an insurance company or we come take your money. And then they call that a tax. Look, it's totally illegal. It's classical tyranny on its face. What do you say?
I say it just needs to go away immediately.
Well, here's the deal. A bunch of Republican governors say they're just going to ignore it. And, I mean, the answer is, if you can't ignore it, see, you got to choose your battles. I've asked my crew over and over again, and they don't want to get the health care. They want the full amount of money. They can get it if they want it. Under this, I'm going to have to come up with some plan, tell them what it is, and then do it. But I have to choose my battles. Do I not get the insurance and get in a big lawsuit with the government and penalties and interest, or do I fight them on all the other subjects, but roll over to this? I mean, you've got to choose your battles, but I think the way to go with this is non-compliance at this point, but we need to debate that. Thank you for the call. Let's talk to Quentin in Louisiana. You're on the air. Quentin.
Greetings, Alex, from the cashless state of Louisiana, where you could be arrested for buying something secondhand with cash. How you like that?
You know, I saw that last year and couldn't believe it. And it's actually is the law. You can't buy things secondhand with cash. You get arrested because you're a prisoner, and prisoners can't be trusted to have lemonade stands or garage sales. Prisoner.
Exactly, Alex. First of all, I totally disagree with Obamacare. The only thing that the American people could look forward to is just another deduction line on their checks to right under Social Security. Free health care, that's a total dream. Second thing I want to get into is I have a message for the preachers of America, or behind the pulpit, that they need to stop preaching a watered-down gospel and start preaching the true gospel of Jesus Christ and telling the American people and waking them up and stop all this nonsense.
I agree with you, sir. And even if you don't believe in God, the issue is this is an immoral country. People are acting like zombies and slobs, myself included. We need to recognize the good from the bad and try to be good. But if you just say, oh, we're just animals, there's no good or bad, well, now it's law of the jungle, folks, and that isn't pretty. Let's go to another caller here. Let's go ahead and speak to Jake in Oregon. You got about a minute and a half, brother.
Hey, Alex, how you doing?
Good.
Hey, I have a question. What do you think will happen when if Mitt Romney gets elected? Many people have told me that I might go to war because I'm young and I'll be that era.
I think if Mitt Romney gets in, the same special interest that financed Obama will just continue, but with a fresh pony. People will be like, but he's a Republican. Why is it continuing? Because this is the agenda they want. You know, why did Roberts, he was a Republican. Why did he flip? Why? Because the bankers want it. I mean, I meant to play that clip again. In fact, God bless you. I appreciate the call. Can we go out with the clip about we're slaves to the bankers? I wanted to play that all day. We're going to end this segment. We'll come back with Tarpley, because we're live now, but we're going to go to that interview with Tarpley from earlier, with them saying you're slaves to the bankers. Here it is. That's a darn good clip.
Obama's presidential campaign is asking Missouri law enforcement to target anyone who lies or runs a misleading television ad.
Folks, that's not it. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. That we have a CNBC clip we're going to play all day and had queued up. And I played it a bunch. I'll play it on the Sunday show, if you're a new listener, where they said that we're slaves to foreign banks, and that we're, quote, absolutely slaves, and that it's a world government, global governance run by bankers. In fact, I'm going to have Kurt Nimmo right now repost that as the top story at Infowars.com. I think it's so important. In case you're a new listener or like, what are you talking about? I'm going to get that posted up on the site. I'm going to get that at Infowars.com for you, and nothing's going to stop it.